Hey everyone, guess what? We do not have ugly swag. We have spaced out radio gear that you're going to want to wear. Why? Because no one wants to wear ugly clothing. So head on over to spacedoutradio.com and go shopping today. You'll be glad you did. And it's a great way to support our show. Once you get your gear, send us a picture of you rocking out in your SOR swag. spacedoutradio.com, shop there today, and make yourself look good.
Welcome, everybody, to Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours edition, because I'm filling in for Dave tonight. And we're going to have a fantastic show. We have Geraldine Orozco joining us, getting into some spiritual stuff. You know how I love spirituality stuff. I'm really into that topic. So it's going to be a pleasure speaking to her tonight. Let's go ahead and see who have the medal positions tonight. According to Race Fan, it's going to be Race Fan with the gold. That's going to be to Mothman with the silver, and then Robert Lamont Jr. with that bronze. Definitely want to thank everyone for coming in. Let's go ahead, welcome as many people in as we can before we get the radio side of this started here. So we have Paul Holland stepping in the building. Hey, Paul Holland. We have Cosmic Joe Chronicles. We have Brown Door saying, good evening, Brown Door. Thanks for coming on in. We have Jimmy J. Jordan Gonzalez. Thanks for coming, Jimmy. Appreciate you showing up. We have Laura Lobb saying hello, Laura. Appreciate you coming. Let's see, Paul Holland. We have Mel WD40 lubing us on up, getting us into the show. We have Mr. Andy Callie. Thanks for coming on in, sir. Appreciate you showing up. We got UFO Tim James in the building. Thanks for coming on in, Tim. Appreciate you showing up tonight. We got Lars Jansen. Thanks for coming in. Kitty Catty Whack is here. Kitty Catty Whack, thanks for coming on in. Deidre C. Good evening, SOR family. Happy September to you all. Thanks for coming in, Deidre C. Let's see, getting down the list. How many more can we get for the buzzer here? We got Millennium saying, hey, Dave. Hello, fellow space travelers. Hey, Millennium, thanks for coming on in. Candy Wolf, thanks for showing up tonight. Greetings to everybody. Right back to you. Who else do we have? We got Sleepy Howl coming on in. Appreciate you showing on up. Let's see. To Mothman. I said to Mothman, right? Let's say it again. To Mothman, thanks for coming on in. Appreciate you showing up tonight. Necessary Dialogue, thanks for coming in. Appreciate you showing up. Matthew Gutka, thanks for coming on in. I see you there. Thanks for coming. Flat Six is in the building. Christine Lynn is also in the building. Mewoken, Operation Shutdown. Let's see. Yeah, Tim, opening theme music is crushing, right? Fits me just right. We got Dead Fish in the building. Hey, Dead Fish. We got S. Vermet as well. And Lead the Bee. Lead the Bee is here. Hey, Lead the Bee. We got Gory Tiger. We got Unveiling Addiction. We got Bomber. Thanks for coming on in. Eternity Eternal. And Jessica S. All right. Here we go. Let's get the podcast side started. Welcome to Spaced Out Radio as we get ready to start the radio side of this. And here we go. Fantastic show plan. Yes. Greetings, space travelers. Welcome home. You just tuned your dial to Spaced Out Radio, the only place where you can own the night. I'm your host, Mr. Rob G, filling in for Dave Scott tonight. And we're broadcasting to our terrestrial affiliates across North America and digitally to digital platforms all around the world. Remember, you can access our archives for absolutely free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. And while you're there, please consider hitting that subscribe button. Don't forget, you could also follow us, X, Instagram, at Spaced Out Radio, at Spaced Out Radio Show. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where the options are endless. You can stay up to date with the SOR Newswire, get yourself some official Spaced Out swag, plus rock out to that man, Bumblefoot, and oh so much more. We have a fantastic show planned for you today. We have the spiritual you tonight with Geraldine Orozco, right? As we are waiting for her to join us here tonight. I just want to say thank you to everybody coming on in. It looks like we have a few more minutes to welcome people as we await her arrival here. Who else do we have? We have Juliana McGill, who has stepped in the building. And I just want to say what's up to the radio audience out there as well. The names you hear me reading are names here in our actual YouTube chat, because we do a video show versus what you hear on the radio. And you're welcome to come over and join anytime. Anytime. We'd love to have you. And let me see who else has joined us here in the chat. Let's see. Babylon Rose is here. Thank you, Babylon Rose. Michael Fontaine is here also. Who else has shown on up? Polly Rotterman. Polly Rotterman is officially here. We do appreciate you showing on up here tonight, Polly Rotterman. Let's see. Flippy. Yeah. Flippy is here. Flippy is here. Okay, there we go. Blue Cruise. Yeah, Blue Cruise. Not used to seeing you early like that, Blue Cruise. Thank you for coming on in. Appreciate you showing on up. Cody Tier, thanks for coming. Algaray, thank you for coming on in as well. And I think that's about current. And if you heard the boop, then okay, wait, Ozzy, thanks for coming in. And Sierra, can't forget you. All right. And as you heard the boop means that we are about to be joined by our guest for the night. Ladies and gentlemen, please, warm welcome for Geraldine Orozco. Hello, Geraldine. How are
Oh, hi, I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Finally get a chance to meet you. So that's an awesome thing. And I know this is a spiritual you. So we're going to be going down that rabbit hole, which is awesome for me because
Yeah.
I think this whole thing works off of positive energy. So I'm going to love hearing what you have to say tonight. But what I would like to do is, being that this is the first time we're talking, if you wouldn't mind taking me down the trip, the lane of how you became, what made you decide to get into spirituality? Like, how did that all start? Where did that begin?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was born and raised really in a very spiritual family. So I was raised meditating, and I'm a lifelong contactee since I was a child. Since the age of 5, I've had experiences that have shifted my perception of what we think is reality. And I had been meditating for many, many years, but in 2013, I decided to deep dive into some of that work and to some profound shadow work in order to answer deeper questions about love, deeper questions about consciousness, about our existence and the purpose of our life. And 4 months, I decided to leave I had a high-end event planning company. I left that for 4 months in order to go into meditation. And I would meditate maybe sometimes up to 9 hours a day. And during this time, I began to deconstruct all of the traumas, all the belief systems that I thought were me. And I found the true self, the true observer, the one that is within, that has no name, that has no identity, that has no sex, nothing, just that core element, that essence. And what happened when I discovered this element of myself is that it began to open massive information for me. And in October of 2013, I had an incredible contact experience where a white light entered my room and I was taken on board a light orb that essentially took me to the Pleiades, introduced me to children that were supposed to be mine. They were half human and half these interdimensional bodies, beings. And also, I was introduced to what the Matrix was and the construct of this, what we called a reality, down to the molecular cellular level. And that's when I began to really understand things. These all the philosophies that we have heard about consciousness, about what we are, everything really kind of boiled down to understanding the mechanics of this system, of this hologram that we exist in. So it changed my life completely. But for me, what really changed is that on Monday, when I went to see my client for the first time, I realized that I had developed these psychic abilities. It activated this experience, activated psychic abilities, and I began to see the bodies of people, their thoughts, their emotions. I can hear people 3 houses down having conversations in their kitchen. So it just completely ripped open a vision, and it took really 3, 4 months to be able to integrate that and to learn how to, be in the world again in that way. And yeah, and from there, I was living a kind of a double life for some time until 2017, and in 2017. Everything completely changed again as I went into hypnosis and I began to download information about the origin of mankind. I had much deeper questions about the experience that had happened to me, trying to make sense of this interdimensional consciousness and the role that it plays in our lives. Now realizing that actually hundreds and thousands of people are having these experiences. And that really drove me into researching the subconscious mind, how we develop these concepts, how we see things, how our psychic abilities are developed. And I went back to study epigenetic psychotherapy. And essentially, from there, I began to link the dots between consciousness, spirituality, and our DNA. Essentially, how these link together, how they're intercommunicating, how information is stored, how it's passed down through generations, and how do these experiences of interdimensionality, even they are stored and activated in our DNA. Essentially, once we begin to wake up consciousness, we begin to open the doorways to this information. And so the question is, what do we do with that? So that is my primary area of interest and research and work. And that's how I got into it.
That is actually awesome. And I'm under the belief that some people are born unlocked or activated, and then some people have experiences that trigger that activation for them. And you can tell that it's the path you're on is a genuine one, because I don't think that people don't usually, as young adults, get into the whole spirituality thing and understand what that really means. So it shows that you were driven to that, to do that, which is just like a genuine thing, and I just appreciate that. I did have some questions though. I was watching some things on you, and it showed that, or you had spoken and said that you were in genetic psychotherapy. What is that exactly? I had questions about that.
Yeah, so epigenetic psychotherapy, epigenetic has to do with how we store memory in our DNA. DNA is a blueprint of information. 2% of that is writing the protein of this physical body. And all of that information that is stored within this organism, the blueprint of whatever we are, on the layer on top of that, if you could say, is actually a rewritable code that essentially is all of the things that we're doing, interacting, ingesting, breathing, everything that we are experiencing in our everyday life is actually affecting the organism from the upper layer. And what happens is that if we repeat some of these patterns repetitively, they essentially become deep ingrained programs, bioelectrically, because we are bioelectric organisms, and also biochemically, which is the signature, the marker signatures, the biochemical signatures that actually store the data in DNA. So what happens is that, for example, severe trauma, let's say we lived through a war, that trauma literally gets passed down through the generations, through the mitochondria. It is passed down to the next generation. They literally will respond to things in the same way that a person that has gone through that trauma has also experienced. And so my research is around what are we passing down? And where my work is, and the book that I'm writing now and the research that I'm doing, is really the connection between epigenetics and the morphogenetic field, which essentially is talking about the network, the instruction manual that brings into form this physical body. And so what I'm seeing and researching is that essentially memory is the key to a person. As you mentioned, some children are born wide awake. In fact, all children are born completely conscious, and they have a lot of their memory accessible to them. It actually becomes suppressed as a result of trauma, programming, indoctrination. And by the time they're 7 years old, most of these memories kind of begin to go back into the subconscious mind. And most adults, most people, until they reach their adulthood, won't really access them until, they really reach for that part of themselves. Um, but essentially, it's about what are we passing down and how much power, how much free will do we have in the present moment in dictating the information that we're holding within our genetics in order to pass it down. So, because we're bioelectrical beings, we're deeply interconnected, interwoven into a web of consciousness. And this is the bioelectrical web of memory. So, what we consider past life, future lives actually are things that are completely simultaneous and available to us in this present moment. And we can access those memories. And a lot of times these memories can actually create spontaneous healing. Sometimes they can access a recall memory of who you are and guide people into their purpose. So as a psychotherapist, I work with these elements in helping the person recover that memory, essentially, in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's great. And you mentioned something there because I was going to actually talk to you about this down the line, but since you brought it up, with children, and I agree with you because I do believe that I believe as human beings, technically we are all born open and unlocked as far as the possibilities. As children, you believe that anything is possible and you're just open to anything and everything. And then we get put in a system, a structure, with schooling, where they now put you into this machine. And I think I'm under the belief that the whole societal structure is like a suppression tool for that consciousness that we have. Now, with that being said, the thing I was going to ask you later down the line was, do you think that's why you have these extraterrestrials that visit schools and try to make contact with children? Do you think that potentially they're doing that because they understand that they're able to capture a human with a completely open mind? Do you think they realize that, and maybe that's the reason why they go to an aerial school or a Westall school and try to contact children?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Well, really, I'd love for you to consider it this way. we are constantly surrounded by entities, beings, consciousness. We're constantly moving in and out of dimensions. Okay, so the fact that those children collectively can experience these beings is really speaking to the physics of human resonance. Because these beings that are existing, the interdimensional consciousness is oscillating at certain vibrational frequencies, and really in a group of 100, only several of those that are in resonance with that frequency will be able to interact, transact, and recognize the memory of that experience. So in this case, these children had this experience, and many people during that space were able to remember and actually saw and experience these beings. So I think it's really important to understand that a lot of these collective experiences are happening as an activation of the consciousness of collective groups. And we are, because everything is cyclical, most of us in our life are going to experience and are currently experiencing interdimensional contact visions and these sightings. But we have to be aware of tuning in to the fact that we are multidimensional. Once we begin to tune into that fact, it's going to dispel this concept that, we can't really see them, or they don't exist, or they're only there once in a while. These beings that are actually constantly surrounding us at all times. And I think that these major group events like that have happened in history as part of ascension cycles, collective frequencies that are, ascending, because we are moving in an upward spiral in terms of frequency collectively. So humans are going to be activating more of that vision, and we've been going through that incrementally over the past, however many years since the last cycle. We're headed in that direction of having more of that activity. So yeah, I think, and another element that is really important about this in pertinence to my research is that what I find is that actually genetically, we're all kind of interrelated. We come from one origin. Even you and I, which just met today, have a relative in common 2,000 years ago. Okay, so we come from one origin, and that's really important to understand, because there's a collective memory that is being activated within us. And when we have these kinds of experiences like sightings and collective sightings, it's literally in our DNA that we have connections to the species that we are interacting with. Let's say the Pleiadians, okay? And why do I say this? After interviewing several family groups of people that have been experiencers, one interesting element that came up is that these families, even though they don't talk to each other about ET contact, they are having experiences with the same kind of beings. Let's say one family is all connected to blue beings and the Pleiadians, another family is all connected to the Lyrans. So it seems like we have this memory in our DNA, and it's ancestral. It also plays a role in the origins of our roots. Okay, like for example, the Hopi Indians were deeply connected to the Pleiadians. So if we begin to research the history of the land in which this event happened, which, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel it happened in Africa. Is that right, Rob?
I
That
believe,
experience?
I believe so.
Yeah, it happened in Africa, or South Africa, or Africa, if I'm somewhere. And so somewhere in Africa. But if you look at the genetic roots of that and the kind of beings that they depicted, actually there was a lot of depictions of these kinds of beings in that area for a very long time in the history of that area. So I find it really interesting that we seem to be connecting in these kinds of groups as a group activation of consciousness based on what we're interacting with. It's a collective, the group was in resonance, not only vibrationally, but also genetically. It's an activation of memory in order to be able to interact with these beings. It seems that's how it works.
Yeah, and it seems like you're going right down the path that I'm driving right now, because the thing I wanted to get into, which you may have briefly just brushed on right now, was the term that's used. And I talked to a lot of people in the consciousness field And I truthfully think it's the most important part of this whole dynamic. Not necessarily that ETs are here and they're in these crafts, but just more of the understanding that, okay, they're contacting us through consciousness, and consciousness is the key for us to ascend to where we're going. And I hear a term that's used within the community of DNA activation. Now, that may be what you were just sort of covering, but if you wouldn't mind kind of going into what that means.
Yeah, so the way I look at DNA activation, I know that that is a term used a lot in the spiritual community, definitely. Um, the way that I look at DNA activation is from the perspective that we are bioelectrical organisms. And our DNA, the way that it functions, the way that it accesses memory from the morphogenetic field is literally through the field of bioelectricity. Memories are bioelectrical charges that are within our field. They exist within our field. So both traumatic experiences are collected in the body through stagnation of frequencies, stagnation of emotions, which then produce a frequency, which is at a very specific charge. Bioelectrical charge. And so what happens is that that creates a series of biochemical responses, a series of blockages within the networks of energy in the body, creating stagnation and essentially illness in the body. So when we talk about activation of DNA, now mind you, these stagnations and these illnesses, they literally get recorded epigenetically in the body, in the blueprint of the body. And if the human doesn't do something to reverse the activities that they did to create the illness to begin with, this is usually going to be passed down through the generations. And that's usually what happens. Each generation ends up a stronger manifestation of the contraction of that information from the generation before. So let's say I have profound hate for the female to being a woman, right? That resentment towards the divine feminine, for example, that passed down to the next generation to the point where my great granddaughter, she can no longer produce a child, or she can no longer have she has womb issues or like severe blockages of having a child. So those are very severe, and every generation these manifest into our DNA as a memory. So the activation of DNA would be the reversal of these profound programs as a result of the stagnation, the blocking of the bioelectricity in the body. Now, bioelectricity, how does that function? Our bodies are literally like a vortex. The shape that all pathway of life force takes is literally in the form of a spiral, of a vortex, which then creates a pathway of a toroidal field. So all matter is kind of oscillating in this toroidal field. The human body has that field, the planet Earth has that field. An apple is moving in that field, like many models of how pathways of life force are literally being expressed. And so our physical bodies are the same. And so what happens is that when this body slows down in a frequency to a very low, sluggish moving frequency, we are going in the direction of death. It is the deactivation of DNA, which means that we become stagnant, and all that we're doing is repeating the information epigenetically that has been handed down to us or that we've collected since birth, even in the womb, right? So that would be the deactivation of DNA, and the organism usually results in death. The opposite of that is the activation of DNA, in which the body begins to move at a higher frequency, which means that your vortex is spinning faster. We're moving life force through the body. You are a conduit of life force. You're a co-creator from that perspective. And this creates vitality, longevity, healing, psychic abilities, your higher faculties, which are essentially your connection to the source and the network of the Akashic records. We are able to access higher levels. Yes, go ahead.
All right. Yeah, I just want to go ahead and stop there as we get ready to go into this first break already. We're getting deep tonight. Our spiritual self, consciousness, and a bunch of other things as we jump down the rabbit hole tonight with Geraldine Orozco. You guys don't go anywhere. We're getting into it tonight right here on Spaced Out Radio. we are clear. Yeah, yes, it's great to meet you. Like I see you all the time, obviously on the show, and I'm into what you're talking about. And I've sat up and tried to theorize so many different things that I've said on this show about what I thought consciousness is and how it's interconnected with everything in the universe, and that's kind of what I want to get into it with you. I don't want to spoil it, obviously, during this break, but it's just really great to meet you.
Yeah, same, Rob. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to talk with you tonight.
Yeah. You, like I said, you to be able to jump into that, so early on, like no one's when you're younger, you're not thinking about consciousness. You're so wrapped up in life and things you could do out in the world versus just focusing on something like consciousness. So that's pretty special.
That's true. That's true. Hopefully now we are moving in a different direction where we become more aware, I think. I think it's time for that.
Yeah, I think we're moving to a point where, I think there'll be a day where everyone's conscious and awoke, and it's going to be a beautiful thing. And I just kind of try to imagine like what that's going to be like, where everybody from birth is already activated, ready to go. Like a lot of people uh don't wake up until later in life. You go through life, you have all these experiences, then you kind of realize, okay, wait, I'm being suppressed. And then you kind of step outside and look at it from the outside. And then that's like for a lot of people when the awakening starts. And you're older at that point, right? So I can only imagine living your whole life from start fully awake and being able to access those things within consciousness that we are still trying to activate. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, everything is cyclical though, I think. We kind of go in and out of it all our lives. And I think it's necessary to have those parts where we don't have that awareness. I think it's all part of it because that's very valuable information. I think the universe is kind of experiencing through us.
and one thing that I realized at this point is that as you're going through life, you actually are accessing some of the things that we talk about, but you don't even realize it. You don't even realize
Yes,
that
exactly.
that was an element of consciousness. Thank you, Maggie, for the super chat. You're awesome. You are so awesome, and thank you for coming on in, Maggie, all the way from the land down under. Yeah, yeah. I get to talk about that. And here's the thing, right? So this is a channel where it's heavily on the cryptid side, UFO side, and but consciousness is a part of all this phenomenon as well. But I feel like you know it's not as well received for whatever reason. Like I don't get it. I don't understand why. I don't know. Maybe because there's no stories that go along with it, and it really is just about awakening. I'm still trying to figure this out right now, so I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think the UFO community is going to change a lot in the next few years. I think as science also changes, because I think we're going to go into a lot of new developments that are going to bridge, all these things, all these like things that we compartmentalize. We compartmentalize math, physics, science, and then the phenomenal like metaphysics. But I think they're going to be merging as we go into the future, which will be nice to see how it changes our
I can
perspective.
agree. I can agree because I think once everyone gets past this nuts and bolts thing, and I think that's what
Yeah,
everybody's caught up on right now. And then once it's realized, okay, nuts and bolts, okay, these things are here, okay, they communicate telepathically, okay, then now you're ready to get into the consciousness part of this, I think. So,
exactly.
yeah,
You got it.
this is interesting, very interesting.
Where are you located, Rob?
I'm in Southern California, down in Bakersfield, from Sacramento though, because I know you're in the Bay Area, and I'm from not from the Bay. My mother's from the Bay, but we're always out there. My brother lives, he works for NASA, and he lives in Santa Clara.
Oh wow, awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to live right by the Niners, the new football stadium.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
So you're a Niner fan, possibly then?
No,
Say no.
I'm
Right.
not very big on sports,
Ooh.
unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's the only thing. I'm not a Niners fan, but being from Northern California, you know everybody up there is. It is just, ugh. I don't know whether I don't know what I hate worse. Okay, here we go.
Okay.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours edition. This is Rob G filling in for Dave Scott. Tonight we have Geraldine Orozco, the spiritual you, as we get back into talking about consciousness, spiritual enlightenment, healing, positive energy, put it out there. And also, you guys can go ahead and follow us on Instagram and X at Space Out Radio, Space Out Radio Show. Please give us a follow. We would appreciate that as we jump back into the conversation. And yeah, Geraldine, so I'm looking into some of the things you're talking about, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I definitely want to ask her about that. One of those things was the holographic versus geometric DNA. I thought you went into some pretty good stuff there. If you wouldn't mind kind of letting the audience know what that's all about, I think the whole theory and how you had that set up was pretty awesome.
Yeah, so holographic DNA, our current, well, not so current. Now it's changing. Our biology talks about DNA at like this: 2% of your DNA writes your protein, the rest of the DNA is junk DNA. And essentially, we don't know what the connections are. We don't know how it affects. Apparently, this system runs on the 2% DNA, and it's complete in that. That was the old thinking. The new thinking with the discovery of the morphogenetic field, which is really, really interesting work that Rupert Sheldrake came upon, and more recently, I'm sorry, I cannot remember his name. I'll remember it in a second. This biologist is one of my favorite biologists that discusses the morphogenetic field. He does really in-depth research on it. But what he discovered was that the bioelectricity, which interconnects the morphogenetic field and the DNA, essentially, there's a connection between that, and the connection is the memory. Okay, so it seems that the body, literally, we have a field of memory that is not inclusive to the physical vessel. It is something that extends in the field, essentially, from which the DNA is pulling information from. So this kind of breaks your idea of how we access memory. And we know that memory isn't localized to the brain. Memory is literally within the body, then the whole body. This is how we have phantom limbs. This is how we can transplant an organ, and a person can remember the memories of the person that had the organ, like the liver, for example, or the heart. They literally have dreams of the life of the person that held the heart before them. So there's literally a network of memory that is, in addition, an extension of the organic matter that holds the body. So essentially, holographic DNA is essentially that. We are talking about this holographic network of memory system that the human seems to be moving through, and as of it's projected from that. The physical body is a projection of that holographic information. And we are carrying in that memory through the morphogenetic field many things, many layers of this information. What I was shown, and what my research is showing, and what I see in people's bodies that I'm working with every day, because ever since I developed that vision, it allows me to look into the field of the human, and what I'm looking in their bodies, I can see the memories of whatever is causing the ailment in the body within their field. It's literally in the field. It's in a network of information that we can access as a point. It looks like an energy color, it looks like a frequency, it looks like a density, and you can pull that information, you can move it out of the body, you can move it into the body. And so this field, essentially, this is where we start talking about alchemy. transmutation, the transmutation of one form of energy, which is a lower oscillating form, into a higher form of frequency. And it's really, really important because this is essentially how we heal. And this is not new information. It's information that we have been, knowing for since the beginning of time. Really, all ancient civilizations talked about being able to heal and move energy in the body through the meridians, for example. Um, so, yeah, and so the other thing about holographic DNA is that this is part of my research, and what I'm discovering is that we not only carry memories of the form of the physical body within the morphogenetic field, we not only store emotional data, but we're also storing memories like past life memories, future life memories. And then, of course, the network that interconnects us to our starseed lineages, which is it's known now as a starseed lineage, which essentially are your roots, your interdimensional memories of yourself as, let's say, a Pleiadian or a Lyran. So we tend to store this information in holographic DNA, and the body can be healed through this bioelectrical system. There was a scientist called Peter Garayev. He was a Russian scientist who was one of the godfather of bringing in wave genetics into our field, and essentially talked about how you can use the same syntax as DNA in order to create frequency waves through sound, and using that as a language in order to speak so that DNA forms and creates and builds the protein that is needed in the body. So he was building limbs, regenerating, fingers, restoring, burn marks in a body, regenerating the human body through wave genetics, through the frequency of sound and word and intention, as we know through Dr. Emoto's work. And so this is essentially what we're talking about. We're talking about the morphogenetic field, which is this instruction manual that the body is moving in and out of, that we are producing the holographic system from there. And we can manipulate that. We can manipulate that by accessing our higher faculties, which operate at the level of these frequencies that we can move and we can change. It's based on our bioelectrical system, which is the emotional body. The emotions are bioelectrical charges that are run through the body that produce chemistry that creates changes in the physical body, as we know. So if we understand that at the deeper level, we can understand that the mastery of the emotional body is really how we begin to change the divine, you can say, chemistry, but also geometry of the body. Okay, so where does geometry play a role into this? What studies have shown about DNA is that when DNA becomes really, really crumpled up and weak. So DNA is literally like this beautiful little ribbon being written, and you can see it. There's lots of animations of that. When we go through severe trauma, stress, anger, what happens is that the DNA contracts. And what happens when it contracts is that it's no longer expressing at its full expression. So you have a lot of inconsistencies in the body. Not only is your body's immune system suppressed, which is a direct reaction of that, but essentially your body is not operating, not even at 10% what you can operate at in order to access vitality, health, everything. And more importantly, the access to your memory, because the connection between memory and your spiritual ascension is very important. The human that accesses their memory throughout their entire lifetime, if you can begin to access your memories as a child, even in the womb, this is actually part of the integration of the part of becoming whole that the human has to go through. And that extends into past lives, which, again, I want to make clear, time is not linear. Time is a simultaneous, it's like a sphere. So we are accessing all of these little points, these energy points within the field, as I mentioned, of these memories that we access through our vibrational frequency of the vessel. So essentially the human is is utilizing this beautiful biochemical bioelectrical system in order to form this vessel. And the vessel operates at its optimum when it's most in harmony, and that harmony creates symmetry, symmetric geometry in the body. Not only does the DNA begin to form a beautiful symmetry in the way that it's expressed and being built and written, but also the bioelectrical runways of energy in the body that create the toroidal field also come into harmony. And we go from moving in a centripetal form, which is the depletion of our life force, into centrifugal into a centripetal form, which is where you become a magnet. You magnetize the body into a really powerful state of co-creation. And it is that geometry that is the most symmetric that is created by the rebalancing and the reharmonizing of the physical body. So you're harmonizing essentially mind, body, soul. We hear that a lot. But the actual integration of that, what that looks like, is a regulated nervous system, activated memory, and the ability to move life force through the body in order to sustain healing. That's really, really important.
That is awesome. Very in-depth explanation, and I do appreciate that. And I wanted to go to back to a thing you said about you said the morphogenetic field, and then being able something that's outside of you, and then you being able to access that. So I want to throw this out there. The way that I've perceived it, and obviously I don't. This is just a theory, but the way that I perceive it is that from what I'm hearing with the morphogenetic field is almost is that potentially your aura, and then is your consciousness. If you look at consciousness versus your energy field, are those one in the same? I guess is a quick question for you.
Yeah, awesome question. The short answer is yes. What we think, what we have known, what we have been taught as our aura, is essentially we are spheres. We are made up of spheres, basically. The human organism is a collection of infinite amount of spheres, which intermesh us with the greater bodies of consciousness, like the planet Earth. We resonate with the planet Earth, with the solar system, with the galaxies, and so on and so forth. Okay, so we are interconnected, and each one of these spheres is a certain dimension, which is oscillating at a certain vibrational frequency. So again, as I mentioned at the beginning, we're constantly moving in and out of them because our physical body is literally the fields that create our reality. And so I want to make sure I don't miss your question. So you talked about the morphogenetic field. Essentially, the morphogenetic field is that, because it's essentially the instruction manual that brings this vessel into form. Okay. Um, Infinite potential, right, which is source, let's say, creates a fractal of itself, which essentially through the layers, as it goes down the layers into more fractalization, which is essentially what this physical body is, because it's experiencing most dualistic, most separate experience of the whole. It has to be more individualized, more personalized, and this is the soul experiencing through the personalities of the physical vessel. So the reintegration of that is the awareness that within your aura, everything that you believe, everything that you perceive creates a vibrational frequency of your field. And that's what we know of as the aura. That's your morphogenetic field. It becomes either a magnet or a repeller to the experiences that a human is having.
Okay, great explanation as well. And so, in my thought process is just like you said, and I'm glad you said that. The way that I look at it is, yes, that field extends outside of your physical body in a certain distance, and that energy actually is interconnected with like the energy that operates the earth, and it powers the universe as well. So it's like you're plugging into the energy field of everything that is, and then like it to give an idea of how you could feel that. potentially, and tell me if I'm right or wrong on this, is like when you walk into a room or someone walks into a room, you have your back turned, but you could feel the presence, right? And then as well, when you come in contact with someone and you can feel whether they're angry or happy, and that's your fields crossing each other. Is that accurate?
That's absolutely right. Absolutely right. Now, it goes even deeper than this, and it's like this. Even the country that you're born in, genetically, is a resonance to historically, ancestrally, what you're here to experience. Okay? Think of it that way. Um this planet Earth is a self-organizing intelligence, exactly like your physical body. Our physical body is a self-organizing intelligence. It takes infinite potential and it organizes it in the chakra system through frequencies, lowest to highest. We know that. In that same way, we collect in groups collectively in this way through resonance. So we might think that we meet people by random chance. We might think that we're like sitting in a bus and a random person comes on by random chance, but really every single human in that bus is at the same frequency. If you begin to interview each one of those individuals, you go down to the subconscious layer, you begin to understand the resonance of the people that are there. So we are literally operating by this beautiful self-organizing system, and this is where we have that question about free will. Like, so if that's the case, if we're so deeply interconnected in this web of consciousness, do we have free will? Well, the answer is no, until you wake up consciousness and until you become in charge of the resonance that you're holding. So if your resonance is as a product of your, deep hypnosis, you're unconscious, completely unaware, you're not going to realize that you're repeating patterns, ancestral patterns of resonance that keep putting you in the same circumstances that your ancestors have been dealing with for generations. So the human that wakes up consciousness literally gets to choose if they're going to break that, and now becomes a creator, which actually taps into free will that is no longer repeating those patterns anymore. And that's where you begin to experience real creation.
Wow. So thinking about like-minded individuals, or even the term that's used, birds of a feather flock together, right? Those are like energies attracting each other and kind of in the which is the resonance that you talk about.
That's right. That's right. And it's so interesting. This is after, as a psychotherapist, just doing hundreds of sessions with people from around the world and noticing the patterns of how consciousness collects itself, groups itself, how we create our life experiences. It's very interesting. But here's where we start getting into the topic of hybridization a bit, because let's talk about how do we create a human, okay? When two bloodlines come together, this is absolutely a resonance. They are literally at a frequency that unite, and it's not just immediate frequency, it's literally ancestral. The entire ancestral lineage is a frequency to each other in order to create the child that's going to be created. This is true for a one night stand as much as it is for, let's say, a 20-year marriage. And it's also true for hybridization and interdimensional creation. We are actually such powerful creative organisms that we're creating in more than one dimension, but we don't realize that at all. We don't realize the power that our primordial life force, which is our sexual energy, has in co-creation. And as much as we have to wake up consciousness in making choices every day to be, let's say, ethical people, we also have to wake up consciousness interdimensionally in order to understand who and why we are attracting and connecting with the people that we're connecting, and in what dimension we're connecting with them. Because many people, many of our viewers here, are interdimensional. They have experiences, they have contact, they're aware, they believe. If you believe, you have had experience, either subconsciously or consciously. You have had some kind of experience. So that speaks to your level of genetic activation and also your ancestral lineage. So yeah, it's really important to understand how powerful this resonance actually works.
So let me ask you this, and kind of going off of what you just talked about here, just to preface it. And one of the things that I say that I believe, one of my theories as well, is that we, as far as we know, just within society, we have these five senses: the touch, smell, hearing, seeing, all those things, right? And I believe that there are definitely other senses. It's almost proven, like intuition and all those other things that I think are like sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th senses, and probably even more than that. So when you talk about like when you talk about, okay, like one night stands versus marriage, right? So it in the art of seduction, okay, nonverbal cues, right? So when your energies are mingling in a situation like that, nonverbal cues, what sense is would that be? What sense would that be, right? Like, what if you could put a name on that sense? What sense is that?
Yeah. Well, that's actually a quite a complicated question. And here's why. Because most of our behavior is usually run by the subconscious mind. And very few people are aware of the real intention behind their actions. Okay. A lot of our behavior is driven by chemical reactions, right? The feel good hormones, for example, that drive us. And there's a tremendous connection between the feel good hormones and the feel good chemicals and the biome. Okay, so essentially, if we're running, let's say we have a lot of parasites in the biome, let's say we have a lot of parasitic belief systems, most of our reactions, and again, those the parasitism that we hold within the body is a direct result of trauma. It's a direct result of the fractalization of the self and how we essentially learn to survive. We are in a survival mindset. And in order to survive, we're going to use certain body functions, body reactions, cues in order to survive. We believe that action is going to make us survive this interaction, whatever's happening. So the human literally is just cycling unconsciously through these behaviors with a subconscious intention of survival.
Mhm.
Therefore, their true intention is really within those lines. And usually, that intention causes a lot of suffering because the human is simply operating in a state of absolute separation from themselves because they're disconnected to the awareness of why they're operating in that way, and also from the outcome, which is severely important for a spiritual human. So the opposite of that would be the conscious interaction, right? So I'm very clear on my intention, and I communicate that intention in many different ways. Now, how we receive this information is bioelectrical because it's an emotion. Emotions are bioelectricity. We feel it through the body. We feel the bioelectrical charge, and it's always through resonance. So let's say we're attracted to someone, the attraction between them was designed through the bioelectrical field first by the emotional charge that both individuals are holding. So that bioelectrical charge, and this is why we talk about timelines. This is where we start talking about timeline creation. If you wake up in the morning and you have,
We got about 10 seconds.
oh, okay. Well, we'll talk a little bit more about it on the way back. But we can literally select timelines based on our emotional charge, and we'll talk more.
Yeah, we sure will. I mean, it gets deep. It almost sounds like you're talking about pulling from a place of instinct, but I guess we'll definitely jump into some more of that as we get into it here with Geraldine Orozco. You guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after the break.
That move the needle. Conversations that move the needle. You're listening to After Hours with Mr. Rob G on the only place where you can own the night. Spaced Out Radio.
Spaced Out Radio. You've tuned your dial to the right frequency.
Okay, Geraldine, we're off camera for 5 minutes. I'll see you in a minute.
Okay, thank you.
right, everybody. Welcome back to Spaced Out Radio after hour number 2. Already hour number 2 as we get back into it here with our guest, Geraldine Orozco, talking about the spiritual you, the spiritual me, the spiritual everybody. As we go ahead and bring her back in here, Geraldine. So we're actually about to jump back into it. This is the radio break ends in 10 seconds.
Okay, awesome.
And I got you guys. I got your questions, guys. Submit some more and I'll tag them. All right, everybody, welcome back to Spaced Out Radio after hour number 2 with me, your host, Mr. Rob G, and being joined back with our guest for the night, Geraldine Orozco, talking about, again, the spiritual you, the spiritual me, the spiritual we. Remember, you could access anything you missed tonight, youtube.com/@spacedoutradio. Our archive is extensive and it's absolutely free. Consider doing that. So, yeah, jumping right back into this, Geraldine, I had a question. I know you referred to the non-physical realm, okay? And in your mind, because it seems like in life we're so physically connected to tasks and different things that we do within life, do you think that that's not supposed to be the case and we're supposed to be more consciously active within our world? I guess is the best way for me to ask that.
No, I think that essentially, well, here's the thing. We absolutely must be grounded in the physical body. We absolutely must be fully embodied, and we must experience this realm through the physical body. But what does that mean? That essentially we have to understand the mechanics of consciousness. Consciousness is not something that you can grab onto, hold, define. It doesn't have a certain personality. It doesn't have a certain identity. Consciousness is a field of infinite potential. So how do you manifest infinite potential into this tiny little physical vessel? We in this matrix, let's say this.
Oh, wow. Seems like we lost Geraldine. I'm sure she'll be right back in here so she could finish explaining that to me. I definitely have questions about that. And yeah, so let me take a look and see what everybody's talking about in the chat here while we wait for her return. Let's see. Okay, Jay Truthseeker. I don't think she mentioned yet that the morphogenetic field, oh, I lost it there. Morphogenetic field is the body's electromagnetism. Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of what was discussed. When we talk about aura, I guess that's technically what that is. And that's the reason why we can kind of feel each other when we're near. Like that aura meshing with the other person, and you can feel like someone's presence. That's what I was asking her, because I think that might be kind of what that is related to. Dead Fish She Spread says, first rule of the Matrix, don't talk about the Matrix. Yeah. Maybe Babylon Rose says maybe she portaled. It's possible. I mean, we're still trying to figure out portals, right? I would like to have a portal so I can transport myself anywhere in the universe. Where would I go? I would want to go literally to the opposite side of the universe. Like if there is an opposite side, technically, since they say that the universe is an infinite place, I would like to step through a portal and get to the other side of this universe just to see what life is like over there. It might be exactly the same. They might be doing the same stuff we're doing on this side that, on that side that we're doing on this side. That would be awesome to see. As we are joined back here with our guest, Geraldine.
Hi, I'm so sorry about that.
Through a portal.
I did. I know. I disappeared into the portal. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. Okay, so where were we? Yeah, so you were asked, can you refresh my memory about the question really
Yeah, I was
quickly?
asking about the non-physical realm, and if we're supposed to be so connected in
Yes.
physical life. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, so the answer is yes. We absolutely have to experience this life through the physical body. But actually, when consciousness emerges is when the body does not identify with the physical body. What does that mean? We become entangled. And entanglement functions like this. Anytime that we judge something, anytime that we apply meaning to the things that we're experiencing, seeing, feeling, sensing, hearing through all our five senses, we become entangled. There's a communication, and then there's a response, and it's energetic, and that creates cords, energetic cords per se. I mean, we're literally interconnected to everything in the universe and in the physical realm. But our attention and the charge of our emotional charge in that direction of that attention is what strengthens the energetic core to these things. Okay. And so what happens is that that's very depleting for the human. So we become depleted of our energy. And this is usually why, when we're around negative people, we're drained at the end of the, experience, or we become drained after people that are very vampiric, for example. So the opposite of that is to not identify as much with an identity, such as a personality, your thoughts, even what we believe trauma to be, all the memories of things that have happened to us that had caused us suffering at one point in our life. A lot of us tend to really hold on to, and that weighs down energetically in our body, and it also limits how we experience a consciousness and the emergence of that consciousness. So, yeah, so in other words, yes, 100% you have to experience this experience through the physical body. But the more that you learn how to come into the 0 point, which is the simple observer that observes all the things that are happening without necessarily becoming identified, what we call the ego, the I, if you begin to observe the observer, the one that's watching all these things, experiencing, tasting, feeling all these things, that is the true self, the one observing the observer. And that is where the emergence of consciousness, the activation of our psychic abilities, the connection to the higher knowing, it becomes available to the human. So,
And so, and that's a perfect answer. And here's where just wanted to know, this is where this thought process came from. The question is, the reason why is, when you talk to some people in the conscious spiritual community, the thought is that the consciousness lives on after the body dies. And then in our physical lives, right? So we do things like we verbally speak. When they say when we ascend, then we'll be using telepathy. So then that takes away like a physical thing that we do in our lives. And then the same thing is like astral traveling or remote viewing, where as that would replace physically going to somewhere. And so as our consciousness opens up and expands, then we no longer have a need to be physical within this world. And I was when I was thinking about that, I was thinking with that in mind, that consciousness lives after the body dies, that are we essentially, our ascension process, is it akin to like a caterpillar or a larva in larvae form? We're larva right now. We're in our physical larva form, living life as we're built to live in this body. And then we go into our cocoon at when we pass, and then we ascend in as butterflies, right? And then that's like the metaphor for the ascension. And at that point, we're spiritual or light beings. I don't know if that's what they call those once you get into that energy form, once you leave this body. But that's kind of where the thought process was coming from, just so you know.
yeah,
What do you think about that?
yeah, that's amazing. I mean, the thing is that even the pursuit of trying to be enlightened or trying to embody the butterfly, let's say, is rather futile in reality, because we need to remember that we are all and nothing simultaneously. And I know that that is a concept that's really hard to grasp because we're quite material, physical, feeling, sensation beings. But the more we let go, and that's what this entire human arc incarnation is really about. You begin as source, okay? But only through the life do you begin to diminish yourself into little personalities, little identities, compartmentalized thoughts until you come back to source again when you die. But what if you exist as source throughout this human experience without necessarily attaching to any one part of this experience? And this is where the concept of, the consciousness, it never dies. Right, because it's a field. It's a field. It is the non-material, non-physical essence. It is that ocean of consciousness from which we are, moving through. The universe is learning through us, really. It's living through us. Yeah.
And see, some people explain it in a way where consciousness is this thing that it's the you, it's the personality, it's the thought process, it's all of those things. But I hear the way you're describing it as being essentially the energy source, the zest, the essence, which and that makes sense in that context. And I think when some people talk about it, they talk about it in a context as if the actual you is within that consciousness and you just leave this body behind, but the you actually goes on to do other things. Like, I guess that's where you get into reincarnation and things of that nature. So I guess what do you think about reincarnation first? But then secondly, I guess when you think about it, a past life, if you are remembering things from a past life, how does that carry over if it's just the zest of consciousness with no sort of memory attached to it?
Right. So exactly. I mean, you said it right there. Essentially, uh, again, time, we want to look at our lives as a linear timeline, and it's absolutely not a linear timeline. And that's the thing that's so hard to grasp, I think. And the reason why I can say something like this is based on my research and my work every day with people from around the world for many years, and also repeated clients, which helps an important insight that wherever we are in our journey, we have access to past lives, which are, again, simultaneously available to the human, as well as future lives. And one thing that I realize is that when the elements of themselves, these entities, beings of themselves, become aware of themselves in these past lives as the role, let's say King Arthur, there is an element of activation or ignition of consciousness, a recognition, a memory that is recovered, that is igniting not only the individual that's experiencing that memory, but it's a network reaction that happens within the family. So the whole family will kind of elevate their consciousness. They will also wake up. They will also begin to remember. They will recover memories in dreams. They will begin to remember who they are, in these ways. So we are so deeply interconnected as a human race, but we're also interconnected with these aspects of ourselves, which there are infinite, which are existing simultaneously. There is no time, no linear time. In terms of reincarnation, wherever the essence is aware of itself is the one that is experiencing. Okay. So right now, my essence is aware of this incarnation, this embodiment of Geraldine in this dimension. But also I can access the Pleiadian part of me who's existing in that dimensional plane. And essentially it's like the energy ignites, and we look like webs of light that they little as soon as you recover a memory, your lights begin to turn on, and essentially your field expands. And what you look like when you begin to recover all that memory, essentially through life and at the time of death, when you're born, before you're born, you have the memory. During your life, you're recovering the memory. At the time of death, you have the memory. So it's just this temporary life that we tend to go through this hypnosis, this amnesia, temporary amnesia from remembering that we are the all, we are all simultaneously. And at the same time, we are nothing, because all of these little fractals of ourselves are experiences, simply pure experiences for the infinite essence to experience and to grow and to collect information, um, of different kinds. And we can't even begin to be able to explain that, really. But it's something that all the great sages in history have also talked about. Ancient cultures have talked about it. They revered the element of the soul. Let's talk about the Egyptians, that literally exercised death and being conscious, being lucid in death. You have near death experiences in order to have a vision into the afterlife. I've had a near death experience, and I can speak to that experience. But literally, when you enter into that field, you recover the memory again. You realize. And people say, oh, I remember my purpose. But there is no one purpose. It's literally just the recognition that you are all and nothing. And I think that that's really important to come back to that memory, keep coming back to that, because it's very easy to get identified in the amazing things that we need to and we must remember that we are, like millions of alien species, all of these different elements of ourselves. We're just recovering that memory as one.
Okay, and then let me go to this point that you brought up, lucid, and that was actually my next thing I was going to talk to you about, which is what is the consciousness? And when I say that, I'm assuming that the consciousness is you, because when you lucid dream or you astral travel, and you go to these places where you have an experience, where you're experiencing the environment. What I guess what are you doing in that moment? What are you actually doing in that moment?
When you're lucid dreaming, or
Yeah,
when
you're
you're,
lucid
yeah,
dreaming, like the whole experience that you
yes.
have when you're in these places.
Absolutely. Yeah, excellent question. Well, any number of things, but what I tend to see as a hypnotherapist, walking with people through many lives, at different stages of their life, um, people will always access the lifetime that is complementary to what is necessary for their ascension at this time. And again, it's by resonance. So, as I mentioned, we seem to have a self organizing system which we meet each other by resonance. In the same thing in the field, lucid dreaming is us navigating out of body into the dimensions of our field. We are literally exploring the dimensions of our field in which we exist in fractals of ourselves. Fractals are self similar models. And the more fractalized, the more individuated, and the more compartmentalized that experience, the more physical it will feel. The less fractalized, the more less form it will take, less identity it will manifest, and the higher dimensional plane we will be able to access, or they exist in. So it looks like essentially what we're doing is that we are recognizing ourselves as all, as the all. We see ourselves as different perspectives of the potential experiences that we have in this planet, and all the lessons that we are here to experience. I don't like to use the word lesson necessarily, because it's not like a school to me, and it's not like a punishment. It's none of those things. I think that we are innately alchemists, which is the ability to transmute one form of energy into another. That's literally what the human experience is about. And we have all these experiences in order to exercise the free will. The ultimate goal is the free will. The ultimate invitation, I should say, for experience is free will. The human that becomes aware of their free will is the one that gets to play the most in this dimension and in other dimensions as a creator, and as one that remembers itself as everything. So I think that when we're navigating these lucid dreams, and this is why the ancients talked about lucid dreaming so much, because you walk the dreams. Native Americans, I mean, every ancient culture referred to dreaming state, right? As the portal into interdimensional elements of yourself. And when you go into these lucid dreams, it's the same thing as in the earth realm, that you are remembering yourself as the all in those dimensions as well. So all of these parts of us are going through some kind of ascension process, but in those dimensions, that's not like a thing. For us, it's like, oh my God, we have to ascend. No, it's just, it's kind of part of this experience as a fractal of infinite potential, because evolution is really quite natural. Everything is evolving, whether you like it or not. Everything is moving in a higher octave every moment. So whether you're moving along with that is completely up to you, again, whether you recognize you have free will or not. So that choice is really available to you, and I think that that's really what it comes down to, is the potential for choice. Is, do you have choice? Are you lucid in this dream state, or are you repeating patterns in the samsara, or that repetition? Are you lucid in your dream state, or are you again repeating parasitic experiences in your dream state, in these fractals? And I also want to mention one thing, that your dreams are parallel to past lives. So it's not separate. You're navigating the same realms, the exact same realms.
Mm.
It's not a separate thing. So when you're in hypnosis and you access a past life, you're literally in a deep dream state and you're navigating your dimensional levels. It's exactly the same thing.
Wow, so that's deep. That's the first time I heard that, but it makes sense. So you, in it almost, what it reminds me of, just to give an example, if you remember the movie Flatliners,
I
and
haven't
they
seen
kind of,
it.
oh wow, so they go, when they essentially, it's like a near death experience they're having, which essentially is the place they go to, sounds like the same place you're saying you go to with a lucid dream, which is that other realm. And you're kind of operating in that realm. That's actually interesting to hear. You have to definitely watch Flatliners. Oh my gosh.
Okay.
the,
I
ori-
will
the
watch it.
ori- there's two of them. The original one is the better one, but the new one it's okay. But with that being said, when I look around, I think of, with the energy in our fields. I look at it like, and I try to explain it to people, like, which I may be wrong, but the same way you look at Wi-Fi, right? So you can't see these waves, but if you could put on some glasses that would allow you to see, you'd realize that there's waves everywhere, all around you, going through you, and that is the same thing, is that our energy and consciousness and how we connect with everything out there. So it would make sense that you could do things like remote view and then astral travel, and then have feelings like mother's intuition, where she's 1,000 miles away but can feel something going on with you in your location. And when you see it like that, or you think about it like that, then it kind of makes sense that how we are all interconnected. What do
Yes,
you think
yes,
about
and it, absolutely. I mean, there's something called quantum non-locality, and essentially in our cells we have the memories and the same frequency of a star, of a Saturn, a planet. We literally have interconnected network through that bioelectrical network of information. This memory is all bioelectrical. All of these phenomena that you just talked about are all through this bioelectrical network of information, which is exactly, I was going to just say, that's how we can remote view. That's how we can communicate telepathically. This is also how channelers access information. They're in a, conscious, open eye state. They can access that information through frequency. Downloads that we receive, you're literally communicating in that network field of this collective consciousness. And remember that the earth has its own DNA, okay? And that's what we know as the Akashic record, which every single planetary system has its own DNA, which is its memory storage system, just like we
Let's
have
hold it
DNA.
right there. Akashic record.
Yeah.
We'll cover that right after the break here. Everybody, awesome show tonight. We're getting it in. We're getting your questions in as we get to the back half of already almost the end of hour 2 with our guest Geraldine Orozco. The conversation's getting deep. It's about to get deeper when we ask our questions. You guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. All right. Awesome stuff.
Cool
You're
music.
crushing it. You're crushing it. Thank you. Yeah, you're crushing it. I just knew, see, you were going to be exactly this. And I'm like, okay, great. Geraldine Orozco, she's all mine. I get to ask her anything that I want tonight. So I
That's
had,
so fun.
yeah, because some people, right, that don't do this, like if I'm talking to family members or something like that aren't really into this, they'll just be like, oh, he's just talking, he's just rambling. I'm like, but no. But if somebody on my same frequency was involved in this conversation, they would get it, and it would be actually a great conversation to have. You know what I mean? And that's
Yes.
kind of what I feel right now. So yeah, I'm just glad that we got, this. And once again, the stars align uh to a point to where this conversation was able to take place, because this, I'm filling in for Dave Scott, and this would normally have been his night, and I wouldn't have had the chance to speak to Geraldine Orozco. So things lined up for that to happen, and I believe in that. I think that's a real thing. So
Agreed, 100%. What a joy.
yeah. Yeah, and also I'll extend this out too, because I do the weekend show, the after hours on the weekends, and I would love to have you like on my guest list. There's an option to come in and talk if you wouldn't mind.
Of course, I would love that. You let
Oh,
me know when. Yeah.
definitely. We're gonna link that up. Okay, so let me look in the audience. We had the Maggie M10 super chat tonight, which we do appreciate you, Maggie M10. If you're still out there, um, let's see. I do have some of your questions back here, and we've been so deep in conversation that it's possible that I may have missed some of your questions tonight. So when I go through these, if I didn't ask your question and we still have time, please repost it so I can tag it and make sure that we get those in tonight. I saw a few good ones that we are definitely going to ask. And let's see. What do we got here? Okay. Yeah, but flatliners, yeah, what you described sounds just like that. Yeah, we're going Kevin Kennedy, that's where we're picking right back up. She was talking about Akashic Records. That's where we're going to start back off.
Yeah, that's cool. I'll watch it. Flatliners. It's a film, yeah? It's a film or a
It is.
series?
It's a film. And I'll give you an example. So the realm kind of they go to is almost like the realm, if you remember the movie Ghost. I mean, was it Ghost? The one with Patrick Swayze?
Oh my gosh, I don't watch that many films. I don't know that one. So I'll look that one up too.
I think it's called Ghost. Is it, guys? Am I right? Patrick Swayze, isn't that called Ghost? Or I might. It doesn't sound right to me. That's why I'm asking. What was the Patrick Swayze movie with Demi Moore and Whoopi
Oh,
Goldberg? Yeah, Ghost.
are you talking about the one with the clay? The
Yes,
famous? Yeah, that
exactly.
I think that is Ghost actually. I think I
Yes.
did see that one. Yeah.
So they had that he was in that realm after he passed, and there were like the evil entities in that realm too. They were trying to drag him away and stuff like that. So that's kind of like the same place they go to, because they intend what they're doing in Flatliners. To give you a brief synopsis, is they're
Yeah.
purposely using the defibrillators to shock themselves and stop their heart so they can experience near death. And while they're down, they go into that realm, and they're able to go around and do stuff, and then
Wow.
they use the defibrillator to bring them back into life. You know what I mean? But
That's incredible.
that realm that they live in sounds exactly like, and that if that's where we astral travel to, that's
That's
pretty
exactly.
deep.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you could overlap that with Inception, how they go into
Yeah,
and they enter in the levels,
yeah.
so we're talking about the same realm. The thing is that we always separate them. But that's super interesting. I mean, the Egyptians used to do that. They go into trance state, into death, and they would navigate. They would train themselves, literally. That's what those chambers were about. It was about the practice of death.
And then
And
come back.
exactly,
Wow,
exactly.
that they were flatlining. That's exactly what they were
Exactly.
doing.
Yeah.
Oh
There
my
was a
God.
lot of ancient cultures that did that, actually, not just the Egyptians.
Wow, that is insane. Okay, we got about 15 seconds here. Yes, guys, get your questions lined up. I'll let you know I have 1, 2, 3, 4 right now. So add to the list. We're coming back. Welcome back, listeners, to Space Out Radio, the After Hours Radio Show. Filling in for Dave Scott tonight. We are already on the back half of hour number 2. We only have 20 more minutes with Geraldine Orozco. Make sure you get these questions in. And also, space travelers, you're already traveling space. Consider joining the club. You can do that. Join our Space Travelers Club for as little as $5 a month by joining our Patreon. Please consider doing that. And we would surely appreciate it as we get back in with Geraldine Orozco. You were just talking about, and someone asked a question about the Akashic Record. So if you could pick up where you were and kind of finish off with your statement.
Yeah, so essentially the Akashic Records is the DNA of the earth, and that's what holds the memories of all the ancestral information of DNA. So think of it this way: when a soul fractalizes into this little essence and incarnates into a human body at the time of inception, right, into the cells that create that little zygote, in that exact moment, that's when you connect to the DNA of the earth. Okay. So when you're connected to the DNA of the earth, all the ancestral information through the Akashic records is available to this organism. And actually, the organism, the soul that incarnates, it was manifested by the ancestral lineage of the father and the mother. All of the lessons, the collective lessons of both lineages, call forth the frequency that is your soul that you incarnate into this body. Okay. And it literally defines your life and the kinds of experiences, traumas, joys that you're going to be able to experience in this lifetime. Yeah.
All right. Appreciate that. And let me see. We jumping into some of these questions here. Looks like we had Sierra asking, is there a way to clear karma and energy from past lives through energy healing?
Clients, she said.
A way to clear karma and energy from past lives through energy healing. Is there a way to clear karma and energy?
Yeah, so if you think of it this way, karma simply means cause and effect. And we affect cause and effect in the present moment, in the now, because again, if you are conscious and awake and you are aware of the patterns that you are playing out in your lifetime, the stopping of those patterns is the clearing of karma. That simple. Okay. So let's say you have insecurities. The fact that you in this moment transmute that into confident self-acceptance, absolute radical self-acceptance, and you begin to exist in that from this moment forward, you literally have alchemized generations of trauma around that frequency. And epigenetically, that becomes stored in your DNA. People can heal the body. Sometimes skin conditions clear up, right? Illnesses in the body clear up because you're literally no longer sustaining the environment for these illnesses and for these programs, karma, in which we are playing out. So the human can literally begin to end these karmic cycles by becoming present, and now you access free will. So we don't have free will anytime that we're unconscious and repeating cyclical patterns. But in order to do any of that, the number one thing is awareness. You have to be aware of what are the patterns that you're playing. And to cut the journey short, it's observe the observer. Very simple. Find your 0 point, which is the true self, which there is no self, because the self, we talked about the identity, the ego, it's too small of a compartmentalization. You are way more than that. You are infinite potential. You are all and nothing. So the observer, the one that's observing, is essentially your true self. This is the essence. So as soon as you begin to identify in that, you're going to notice even pain in the body eliminates, it lessens. Ideas of trauma, suffering, compartmentalized separation programming eliminates as soon as you identify the true self. So that's how you can begin to alchemize, and that's how you cut karma, repetitive patterns of suffering, completely. One last element I will say, in order to not create more karma, make sure that all of your choices, once you're awake, are not coming from a place of fear and separation. Every single choice that you make from a place of fear and separation will always result in suffering. Always. So make sure that you are aware of that. And that's also another way to cut karma, clearing karmic. And of course, everything I talked about is energy. All of it is life force. The emotions that you're feeling in your body are pure life force. That's energy. That's alchemy. The true alchemy is the transmutation of your energy, a lower form of energy into a higher form of energy. So it's not just about putting the intention on something, some abstract thought. It has to be fully embodied. That's how you heal, how you change.
Awesome answer. Awesome answer. We have Polly Rotterman asking, can we refuse being part of the hybrid program?
Yeah, so a couple things about the hybrid program. A lot of times when people recover the memory of being a participant in the hybridization program, it's not necessarily happening in this exact moment. It's a simultaneous um, timeline of yourself that you're accessing. Okay. So what does that mean? You may have agreed to this hybridization in another lifetime, simultaneous aspect of yourself, and you might not be aware of the agreements that you made around that. Sexual energy is extremely important because the intent behind the sexual energy will define your kind of participation in the hybridization or creation of any life, even human life here. Okay, so if your intention behind the creation of a child of any kind, human or interdimensional, is coming from a place of trauma, fear, and separation, it usually results in more parasitic kind of experiences, not only for you, but for the child. The child now has to experience the transcendence of that trauma. Okay. And interdimensionally, the hybridization, more parasitic groups are interested in DNA that is alchemized, that is alchemical, that operates at a really high octave frequency. Because it is the manipulation of life force, essentially, which is a very parasitic behavior, which we humans also do. So the way that you no longer participate in that is by also not becoming a parasite yourself. Okay. Whenever we hate ourselves, we reject ourselves, we invert natural laws of this universe in any way through ourselves. We are literally existing in parasitic timelines and co-creating through that vibrational resonance. And we do so in dream state. Okay, because most hybridization participation is accessed through the dream state, right? And so as soon as you become aware of it, you can begin to shift. The way that you shift and you affect your hybrids, okay, once you've had them, is by elevating your consciousness here and now because of quantum non-locality and the fact that we're deeply interconnected. In the same way that when you wake up consciousness, your family also begins to wake up consciousness, okay? They begin to question things, or there's a separation and a disconnect, okay? In that same way, we are affecting our children here on this planet and also interdimensionally. So, your ability to manage what you created is by free will. Again, you choose what your participation is in this moment. I hope that answers the question.
Awesome stuff. Yeah, let me see. We got Sierra saying she's sensitive to noises like loud refrigerators, bathroom fans, etc. What can we do to make ourselves less sensitive?
Okay, so the thing is not to become less sensitive. Um, actually, what's happening is so here's the thing. We're multidimensional bodies. Whichever one of your chakras is most expanded, because remember they're fields around your body, that will create your filter of perception. Okay. So anytime that a human and that is energetically sensitive, which all humans are at different levels, but we need to learn how to master our sensitivities. Our five senses are the gateway to the higher faculties. We need to learn how to utilize them, not anytime play the role of victimization or helplessness, hopelessness, inability to master, inability to control your own self. That is a very specific archetype that is usually run by the first three chakras: the root, the sacral, the solar. The root being a state of fear, the sacral being our relationship with people, places, and things that are external to us, and the solar plexus, a state of disempowerment, no power. So the sacral and the solar, if you begin to contract those fields of your body just slightly, open them until their chakras are 6 inches, the sphere of your sacral, the sphere of your root, 6 inches wide, and try to maintain the first three chakras in that alignment for the majority of your day. You will learn how to ground yourself more in your body. Okay. And that's another thing. Be very grounded, which means be in the body. The reason why we have no control over our sensitivity is because we're exiting the body, actually. We don't want to be in the body. We feel the body is too sensitive, too out of control, but it's because we just don't know how to use the body. So we're usually out here, and this opens the body for parasites, and your field is full of holes and draining your life force through ADHD, ADD, just energy and expression outward. So that has to be recollected. So learn how to control the chakra bodies, okay? And imagine that you have a bubble around you, and imagine that you're going to seal that bubble. And you are using that bubble when you're talking to people, when you're doing something at all times. Be aware of your physical body in its environment. And do not apply meaning to the things that you are tuning into. Number one rule of psychic hygiene 101. You hear the fridge, you feel the fridge, don't apply meaning. The moment that you apply fear or rejection to that sound or frequency, that's the moment you made a hole in your field and you're completely connected to it. So it'll drain your energy. Okay. So completely come back into the 0 point, neutral observer that observes, simply there. You will not have that overwhelming sensitivity anymore. It will be super balanced, and you're going to use your tools for productive co-creation rather than being helpless and out of control.
Great answer. Almost sounds like recalibrating, essentially. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Let's see. We have Jay Truthseeker, who's asking if is Geraldine aware of the historic Sarshina event, which happened in Bulgaria back in the early 1990s, which an ancient alien device that had broadcast telepathic info or DNA to people worldwide. Are you aware of that?
I do remember hearing about it, but right now I don't recall the details of that, so I probably couldn't comment on that. I'd have to revisit the story to give you a good, nice answer. But
Okay,
yeah,
fair
I
enough.
have heard of it. I have heard of it. Yes.
Fair enough. Okay. And we had an awesome super chat come through from Gary Reed, but I think it's probably Dave, but he's fronting as Gary Reed because he's asking you, how many pair of shoes do you own? And I know that's a Dave question all day. So
Yeah, not 200. So
So thanks for the
that's
awesome question, Gary Reed, and this awesome super chat too.
yes, thank you.
All right. So that was the last question. I did want to ask you actually. It okay, so it seems it would appear that for whatever reason, when we look around the planet Earth here, that of all the living things that are on this planet, every other species of anything seems to be in sync with the planet Earth. But it seems like we're the only ones that stick out and don't seem like we're like connected to the flow of I don't even know what you would call it actually, but it seems like we're not fully in tune with this planet. Do you see that? And then what how would you describe that, or what would that be?
Well, I think that that's purely matrix programming, honestly, because we are innately inseparable from this planet Earth. We are completely inseparable. And the more the human connects with the planet Earth, which means that you align yourself with natural laws of the universe, which I actually have an entire 30-day series on the laws of the universe. I highly recommend, because if you understand the laws of the universe, you understand how to access free will and how to live in harmony with yourself and all things around you. Essentially, when we begin to connect deeply with ourselves and integrate our own feminine, masculine energies internally, we begin to regulate the nervous system. We balance the organism into health. We also balance our perception of things into a more harmonious, unified perception, which means that we understand the power and the life force that is ever abundant in nature, and also the laws of cause and effect, the laws of resonance, the laws of free will, which are all natural laws that the human is innately abiding by. And we recognize and we remember that the more we unite with nature, because nature operates in that way. So there's cycles of life and death. Things are always regenerating, but a dried leaf on a tree, it's not going to cry. The tree's not going to cry for the leaf. The leaf doesn't cry for the tree. It's all understanding that it's all part of this natural evolution. Change is part of that. So the more the human aligns with that understanding, that way of thinking, way of being, existing in the harmonious flows, the ebb and flows of this constantly changing experience as a human, the more it comes into harmony, the more it's free, the more it can create. And that's really what the human experience is about, coming into a state of co-creation in the highest state of bliss, in which you are exercising your free will to create. We experience that um, joy, real harmony, real peace. Peace is actually the ultimate expression that the human body can experience, because it's when the body begins to oscillate at its highest frequency and it lives in harmony with nature. So, the idea that we're separate from nature, those are very, very deeply embedded matrix concepts and limited perceptions of separation that we have to wake up from as soon as possible, especially with new technology like artificial intelligence coming out, because the choices we make now will build how our future is going to be. If right now we separate from nature and then rely on artificial intelligence, our human race is going in the direction of transhumanism and even more separation, complete codependency. But if we actually go in the direction of nature, artificial intelligence will work, and it'll also develop more organically in a way that will be conducive to the human evolution in the future. So I think that this is something that we need to be very aware of now and begin to understand. That choice that's important at this point.
I think about when we speak about energy, as we're getting closer to about 4 minutes here. I think when I talk about positive energy, or when I think about that, because I feel like the energy you put out there is the energy that you get back, and I feel like that you have a superpower because you can do something as simple as smile at someone or say thank you or do something like that that would brighten someone's day, right? And it to me it becomes something that's infectious. So it starts with you and that spreads out to 10 people that you come across. They go to 10 other people and now it's spreading across the globe, essentially this wave of positive energy. And if we keep doing that, that I think that go aligns with the whole ascension process that we're going to go through. But with that being said, I have to ask you, because there is the low frequency, what they call, or negative energy out there. Where does that emanate from? Like, where does that originate from?
So we just need to remember there's no separation between our shadows. All negative energy. Their energy is just energy. It's just life force. And life force has, just like we have spectrums of light that we can see and not see, until we activate that ability. Um, we have many levels of deep, deep collective shadow that the human race is holding within our subconscious mind. We think that we're separate from, let's say, the rapist, but in reality, each one of us has little elements that created that rapist, for example. We
Mm.
have little elements of pain and suffering that drive us in the direction of creating harm in order to get love somehow. Be love, experience compassion. So we need to dispel this idea of compartmentalizing the dark and the light and unify that in ourselves first, so that we can begin to access compassion, to be able to see the mirrors that are within ourselves, within the external world. The world right now is an exact reflection of all the deepest, darkest shadows that we all hold within us subconsciously. We absolutely have to dig into our shadows, bring them to the light, be aware of them, accept them, understand them, alchemize them to the best of our ability, and to be alchemists of energy. Energy just as pure life force that is both creative. It can be counter creative and it can be very creative. So we can choose and we can experience. There really at the highest level is no right and wrong. It's simply the way that we choose through free will to utilize our creativity in order to create unity internally and externally. And I think the higher level consciousness is the one that is making choices that are good for me and the collective, not just self-serving choices, because that's where you start having suffering. You create suffering and you are suffering. So when you begin to make choices that are more collectively made, now you cannot suffer and you also will not be able to create suffering. It'll completely alchemize the experience. So I think that's really important to understand, that the origin of the shadow is we are all and nothing simultaneously. We are the source, which is infinite potential. And that potential can be anything, absolutely anything.
Wow. Okay, that's awesome. Okay, and we got about 1 minute left. If you could answer quickly, okay, so say in our lifetime, one day you get to see the world, everyone has been enlightened or awakened. What does that look like for you? With the quick answer.
No form, probably an ocean of consciousness, because when you reach that level, it's less compartmentalized. The higher unity consciousness, the less form we take on. So in the way I see and experience and have known that, is that it's an ocean of consciousness. It's back to that wholeness, that infinite potential. It's just pure energy, life force. Yeah, that's kind of what it looks like. And remember that on the higher levels, it's about immediate manifestation. So we're super conscious of our thoughts and our intentions behind those thoughts. So there's a profound responsibility of your creation. And that usually is never from self-serving. It comes from, again, that collective wellness, collective whole. We're kind of interchanging and exchanging energy in a very harmonious way. That's kind of how that would look like.
Well, that is awesome stuff, Geraldine. I totally appreciate being able to speak to you tonight. Thanks for coming on in. Working. Well, I guess we don't have time to find you because it's going to play the music. Yeah. Okay. Appreciate you coming in, though,
Conversations that
Geraldine,
move
and
the needle.
we're gonna stay in touch. I'll be talking to you soon.
You're listening to After Hours
Take
with
care.
Mr. Rob G on the only place where you can own the night. Spaced Out Radio.
Spaced Out Radio. You've tuned your dial to the right frequency.
All right, we'll be right back. after hour number 3. As we get ready to come back from the radio break, I want to thank everybody for coming in, supporting, and just being great, right? Great talk with Geraldine. It was so awesome. And here we go in about 10 seconds here. All right, everybody, welcome back. Spaced Out Radio, after hour number 3. With me, your host, Mr. Rob G, standing in, holding it down for the guy, Dave Scott. Definitely want to thank you for coming in. And remember, you can actually hop in our archives and access anything you've missed by going to youtube.com/@spacedoutradio. Definitely, it's a pleasure serving you guys tonight. As you can see on the screen here, we're going to be jumping into some of Steve Stockton's missing persons mysteries, and we will not hold you up here as we go ahead and get ready to jump into a little bit of that.
Welcome to Tales Untold and Missing Persons Mysteries on Spaced Out Radio's After Hours. My name is Steve Stockton, and I'm here to take you on a journey of mysteries, legends, and true stories. Come, join me on this strange adventure of Tales Untold and Missing Person Mysteries. Apparitions of Civil War soldiers. Throughout history, numerous wars have been waged on multiple fronts. In 1862, 3 significant battles of the Civil War took place across various areas of what is currently referred to as the Maryland section, situated along the Appalachian Trail. Many lives, particularly those of soldiers, were lost in the violent and ongoing conflict. The number of soldier casualties was so great that some believe their spirits linger on. Hikers on the Appalachian Trail who passed through these areas have shared eerie stories. There have been reports of ghost soldiers, strange campfires, and the distant sounds of cannons by some people. Close to the pass where the fighting was intense is the farm of a man named Daniel Wise. It is believed that the remains of 58 soldiers were thrown into an old well on his property, which has led to sightings of ghostly figures wandering around Wise land. Next, we have the Pierce Pond Ghost. Some individuals enjoy hiking the Appalachian Trail solo, but this has led to negative experiences for some, according to stories. One man, for example, was trekking along Pierce Pond in Maine when he encountered 2 shocking incidents that have stayed with him forever. After hiking several miles and camping at different locations, he settled at the Pierce Pond camp area for the night. While enjoying his campfire, he noticed a figure walking nearby. Upon closer inspection, the figure appeared ghostly and resembled a rugged outdoorsman carrying what appeared to be fishing equipment. During that first night, the spectral figure gradually faded into the darkness. The man resumed his hike the next day, only to come face to face with the ghostly figure once more. This encounter was more frightening than the previous, as the figure halted and gave him an unsettling stare that sent shivers down his spine. Without hesitation, the hiker left his campsite, dashed into the forest, took cover behind a tree, and waited until morning. Once daylight broke, he quickly returned to his camp, gathered his belongings, and left the area before nightfall caught up with him again. And there's the story of the Flatwoods Monster. In the summer of 1952, Edward and Fred May, 2 brothers from Flatwoods, West Virginia, rushed home to tell their mother, Kathleen May, about a strange event they had just witnessed. While playing football at Flatwoods School playground, they saw a bright object swiftly fly across the sky and land on a nearby farmer's property. Ms. May and her sons, along with some other boys from the area, were curious about what had occurred on the neighbor's land and went looking for answers. As the sun set, they noticed an unusual object in the woods. According to Andrew Smith, the executive director of the Braxton County CVB and curator of the Flatwood Monster Museum, the thing had an odd shape. It was emitting a red glow accompanied by smoke or steam. During this adventure, 17-year-old National Guardsman Eugene Lemon witnessed a pulsating light and directed his flashlight toward it. He spotted a, quote, 10-foot monster with bright eyes, a blood-red face, and green glowing body perched in a tree, end quote. The monster then hissed and floated toward the group, causing Lemon to scream and drop his flashlights. According to newspaper reports, several of the party fainted and vomited for several hours after returning to town. Later, Ms. May was quoted as saying that the monster looked worse than Frankenstein. The group turned and ran down the hill, immediately reporting what they saw to the local sheriff. Several men armed with shotguns returned to the scene with Lemon an hour later. According to local reports, they were met with a horrible smell and saw what they described as slight heat waves in the air. Authorities didn't find much, says Smith. What was found was gathered and sent to Washington, D.C., and never seen again. Smith says one of the reasons the Flatwoods monster encounter is so intriguing is that it was only the second or third of its kind and likely one of the first with so many witnesses. It made national headlines, says Smith. Today, on the main road into town, a sign reads, "Welcome to Flatwoods, home of the Green Monster." The UFO sighting, or whatever it was, is in the past but not forgotten. There's not a consensus on what happened in Flatwoods that evening, says Smith. You have your UFO true believers and skeptics who think it was a misidentified barn owl, Smith explains. If I had to pick one, he says, I'd say the most commonly held thought is that the monster is a fun and interesting bit of folklore. Having to decide whether it's real or fake takes all the fun out of it. Next up, the giggling children. There's a spooky tale about some children who appeared unnatural and unsettling to a group of hikers on the AT. The hikers had hiked for miles and set up camp in a particular spot. They were met with an unusual and eerie sight when they woke up the morning after a peaceful sleep. They discovered that their campsite was enveloped by dense mist that failed to dissipate despite the sun shining. As they gathered their belongings, they heard children's laughter emanating from their surroundings. The group was almost done packing up when a group of children, led by one parent, walked out of the mist and past them. These creepy children asked the hikers where they were going, and someone responded they were hiking along the Appalachian Trail. The kids started laughing, and one replied, "This isn't the Appalachian Trail," as they kept walking off. The hikers spent the whole day hearing the children giggling around them from the woods. Hello, friends. Steve Stockton here with you. Now, for some, a walk in the wilderness can be the perfect getaway from everyday life and a chance to reconnect with Mother Nature. For others, the great outdoors can be a dangerous place, and unfortunately, is a place where many people meet their end or just mysteriously vanish. Here are cases for you to consider. Randy Rasco. On November 19th, 2015, park rangers at the Mammoth Cave National Park in Kentucky noticed that a car had been sitting in the car park for around 2 weeks. This immediately set off warning bells, and after doing some digging for information, they discovered that the car belonged to 40-year-old Randy Rasco. As the car had been there for quite some time, the park rangers set about searching for Randy right away. But when he couldn't be found in or near the parking area, they opened an investigation and widened their search. Park rangers and investigators contacted Randy's family to see if they had spoken to him, but chillingly, they had been out of contact for a few months. According to his sister Sherry, up until May 2015, everything was normal. On a regular basis, he was doing his normal things, hunting, fishing, and kept in contact with our brother who lived close to his Bowling Green apartment. Then one day out of the blue, he packed up his belongings, quit his job, and had his mail forwarded to another address, and just left. Sherry said they filed a missing persons report after they found out he had just fled and were worried as he had recently gotten divorced. For a month, the Rasco family waited for any news, and in June, he was found safe and sound in Washington state. Randy made it clear that he didn't want to speak to his family at that time and wanted to be alone. As painful as it was, his family respected his boundaries and assured him they would welcome him back with open arms whenever he was ready. For the next few months, it's believed that Randy traveled all around the U.S., all while maintaining his privacy and secrecy. His family didn't know that anything was wrong until the Mammoth Cave National Park Rangers contacted them to let them know that his car had been found abandoned. With this second disappearance, his family hoped that there would be a positive resolution. But sadly, Randy Rasco is still missing. Search crews, volunteers, and even the Civil Air Patrol all joined in on the search for Randy, scouring the over 53,000 acres of land in the park. Despite their best efforts and multiple searches, no sign of Randy has ever been found, and his car is the only clue we have in terms of his mysterious disappearance. Randy Orozco is described as a white male, 6 foot 2 inches tall, with black hair, hazel eyes, and a slim, athletic build. Anyone with any information is asked to please contact the Mammoth Cave National Park at 270-758-2180. Catherine Van Alst. 8-year-old Catherine Van Alst disappeared from Devil's Den State Park near Arkansas's Ozark National Forest when she and her family were camping. Catherine apparently was playing with her brothers when she wandered off and got lost. What makes Catherine's disappearance remarkable is she was found 6 days later. When found, she was wandering the woods and was eerily calm. University of Arkansas student Porter Chadwick was part of the search party that found Catherine. He told the Pittsburgh Press that when he found her, she walked stoically out of a cave and just said, "Here I am." Many other hikers have gotten lost in that part of the Ozarks and haven't been as lucky as Catherine. A grown woman was lost there for 17 days and died just 50 yards from the road. How did Catherine survive in the woods for 6 days? Did someone take her only to return her 6 days later? Or is there an explanation to this story that we simply can't comprehend? Either way, someone or something might just be lurking in Devil's Den. Kenny Veach. 47-year-old Kenny Veach mysteriously disappeared in the Mojave Desert in Nevada on November 14, 2014. Kenny was hiking near Area 51 and was looking for cave systems and mine shafts. Kenny has uploaded several videos to his YouTube channel under the username Snakebit McGee, where he describes entering a cave with an M-shaped opening. He wrote in one comment, "That ain't nothing. I'm a long-distance hiker. One time during one of my hikes out by Nellis Air Force Base, I found a hidden cave. The entrance to the cave was shaped like a perfect capital M. I always enter every cave I find, but as I began to enter this particular cave, my whole body began to vibrate. Suddenly, I became very scared and hightailed it out of there. That was one of the strangest things that ever happened to me." Now, these videos gained popularity following his mysterious disappearance, and in these videos, he does indeed talk about how his whole body vibrated and he felt scared upon entering this mysterious M cave. Armed with a gun and a camera this time, Kenny headed back out to the M cave on November 10th, 2014, hoping to get a better look inside. However, Kenny never returned home. Although he was a very experienced hiker and outdoorsman, Kenny rarely took a map or GPS device with him on his hikes. According to his family, on the day of his disappearance, he told them that he would only be gone for a short overnight trip. But then when he didn't return home, they immediately called the police. Police, volunteers, and search and rescue teams all scoured the area where Kenny was last known to have been, and on November 22nd, 2014, volunteers found Kenny's phone. According to those volunteers, the trail went cold soon after they located his phone, and there have been no signs of Kenny ever since. At the time of this episode, the mysterious disappearance of Kenny Veach is very much alive in true crime and paranormal circles, but it appears that we are still no closer to uncovering the truth.
All right, that is Steve Stockton, Tales Untold and Missing Persons Mysteries. And I think I said last night, Steve Stockton has the kind of voice that where he can just read a dinner menu and make it sound suspenseful and spooky and scary. Shout out to Steve Stockton. Appreciate being able to, have him be a part of this after hours radio show. So that's awesome stuff. Now, as we go ahead and get ready to move on, as I am filling in for Dave Scott tonight, we do have the paranormal report with none other than it'll be Jax. Here we go.
Brian, what? Knock, knock.
This is a conspiracy. That's what this is.
It's the man with 8,662 podcasts. The man, the myth, the legend.
Oh, we played
Sir
the right,
Brian Bowden.
the wrong clip.
Yes! Yes! Yes!
One big damn conspiracy, and everyone's in on it.
Wrong clip. but the right person. We have Jax Harmon in here tonight with the Paranormal Report. Jax
Hi,
from
everybody.
115. How you been, Jax?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing great, doing great. You know, had a great conversation with Geraldine Orozco tonight. She's just amazing. She has all this insight into consciousness, and like I told her, I think that's really where it's at. I think that's where we're going. The conversation will be shifting that way at some point soon. So, and I got
Yeah.
to meet her. So normally I wouldn't be,
Aw.
interviewing her, but I got filling in for Dave. I got to go ahead and meet her. So that was nice.
Yeah. Well, she's awesome. I love listening to her. Yeah. A lot of times I'll listen to her talk and it's just like, whoa, like she takes you to a whole different place that you never even thought about before.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It's deep.
It is deep, and you know me, I'm a deep person too. So it was like match made in heaven. That's why I couldn't wait to do it, and I have to
Yeah.
listen to this back and see what I think. But we got you
Yes.
in here for the Paranormal Report. What's going on, Jazz? What do you got for us?
Well, actually, I'm going to share a couple of Bigfoot stories that I actually heard, and then I'm going to talk about something else that's going on in the paranormal world. But anyway, I want to start off with telling you guys there were these two women actually here in the United States, and they are mushroom hunters. And they've been doing this for probably 20 years now. And they were telling the story about how they go into the woods and they're always looking for these specific mushrooms or whatever's, out at that time of the year. And I'm not a big mushroom person, but I guess there's certain ones that they're always really looking for. And they say they go out and it's like an all day event. They start out probably 9, 10 o'clock in the morning and they're out there till about 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening before they actually head home. Well, they were out one day and they were kind of just keeping to themselves and they're picking the mushrooms and they've got a pretty good size, load of mushrooms going. And one woman said she was kind of walking off a little bit to the right, and her friend was walking off a little bit to the left. And out of nowhere, they hear this like scream that sounds like this woman in massive pain. And of course, they both look at each other and think like, "Oh my gosh, there's someone out here who's hurt," or like it sounds like a woman like giving birth is how they explained it.
Wow.
And so the one woman who was a little bit further off, she comes walking closer and they decide to walk in a little further to see if they can find, thinking that this is a human that maybe it was hiking, got hurt, or something happened to someone. And as they're walking a little bit closer, they realize that they can no longer hear it. They can't find out, where this is coming from. So they went ahead and decided, well, we'll just go ahead and start looking for the mushrooms because they can't figure out who it is. And they figure maybe it's a little bit further than we even think it is. And just maybe a minute or two later, as they kind of go off a little bit on their separate ways again, one woman happens, they're just looking down and they're just doing their thing, picking those mushrooms. And all of a sudden they hear this scream again, but it happens to be like really close to them. And of course, it startles both of them. And one woman, she happens to just like walk a little bit further forward and she just happens to look up. And she said about 4 feet away from her was this female Bigfoot standing there, like leaning up on a tree. And she said they just stared at each other for a minute. It didn't move. It didn't like do anything outside of just stand there. And she immediately called for her friend. The friend comes over and she said she could hear her, like the way she called her name was with panic in her voice. So she knew immediately to get over there. Well, they happened to walk up, and as soon as they saw it, they realized that the Bigfoot actually had one foot lifted up off the ground, and it looked like an extremely sharp rock was shoved inside the foot. And that now they understand where the scream is coming from. So they're like, oh my God, it's hers. And so they kind of looked at each other like, what do we do? Do we help it? What do we do? And they said just about that time, they were thinking, well, maybe we should approach it. They then heard another scream come from the woods, which startled them even more. So they basically ended up dropping these mushroom bags and running back to the car. And they got back to the car. They were literally sitting there, like neither one of them were saying a word. They couldn't speak. They couldn't really like wrap their brain around like what exactly happened. What did they see? What was that? And about 2 or 3 minutes goes by, and then they start speaking about it. Like, what should we do? Should we go back? Should we help it? What was that? So it wasn't really people who obviously like either believed in Bigfoot or had much knowledge of it, because they were asking each other, what was that? What did we see? And I think one woman finally said, I think that might have been a Bigfoot. Well, they decide to go back. They thought they felt really bad about it. And they're like, look, we've worked the whole day to get those mushrooms. Let's go back, see what we can do. Maybe we can help it and then gather our mushrooms back, because they had literally spent their entire day doing this. So they go back and they're expecting to see it still standing there. But in fact, when they finally got closer to it, it's now sitting down and it's got his foot like lifted up on this rock. And as soon as they got close enough to where they were just about to go see if they could like touch it or help it or do anything to get that rock out of there, it let out like another scream, which again startled them, but they didn't move. And they said as soon as they thought to go lean in to help it, all of a sudden, multiple huge, massive other Bigfoot, and they said there were probably a good 10 to 12 of them, came walking out of the wood line. And they said it was so odd. The way they walked out was almost like how it would remind them of like children walking out of a school classroom, like that single file line. It wasn't like they came out all random. They were literally following each other. And they said it just scared them so badly to think like, oh my gosh, okay, one of them was scary enough, you know,
Yeah.
and they weren't really sure what it was to begin with. But now they're seeing multiple of them, and they said it scared them so badly that they thought we're outnumbered and we don't know, are we going to be safe if we try to help us? Now, obviously, they're going to come help her, and they said they knew, they could tell it was a female, and so that was it. They'd had it. They were like, "That's it. We're out of here. They're going to help it. We're leaving," and they ended up leaving and said they never felt comfortable going back. And they apparently had been doing this in that same area for about 20 years and had never had an experience there, never seen anything, never even remotely thought anything like that was there. And now all of a sudden they're realizing, like, oh my gosh, I mean, there's like a family of them living there, you know?
Yeah, you
Or
figure where they stepped through a portal, or where did they came out of the house? You know what I mean? I want to know where they came from. Like, what
yeah,
direction? Let me
yeah,
go the opposite way.
yeah. They said that it was so strange because they grew up there. Like I said, they had been there so many times and never once. And they said they've gone way deeper than even where they were that day, where they've never ever heard anything, seen anything, noticed anything different or odd. Like, how, like, obviously I go Bigfoot,
Mhm.
researching and looking. I've been doing that for a very long time. So, even if you're not into Bigfooting, you would notice there's odd things. You know what I mean? Like maybe you wouldn't be as like, okay, that exactly thing right there, that you can tell a Bigfoot built that. Maybe they wouldn't notice those things, but it's still, you find odd things like odd wood structures or something, right? But they said they'd never noticed anything before, ever. And that was the first experience that they'd ever had. And now they're like, forget it. We're not going back there. We don't know what that is. Are they safe or not?
That is bananas, Jax. That is bananas. I'll give my thoughts on that as we come back. You guys don't go anywhere. we're going to go ahead and get into this break. We got Jax, but we'll call her not Brian Bowden since we had that soundbite play earlier. She is not Brian Bowden. She is Jax, and she is here with the Paranormal Report. We'll have more of this right after the break. You guys don't go anywhere. Stay right where you're at. Space Out Radio, the After Hours radio show. All right. How you been, Jax? How have things been?
I'm good. I'm doing real good. Just been working on getting really good and healthy and happy and just living life, living my best life. So,
That's
you
what's up.
know,
That's what's up. Gotta love it.
doing
Gotta
all the
love it.
good things.
That's
How
why I
about
said
you?
doing good. That's why I say it. That's why I loved having this conversation tonight with Geraldine because I'm an energy person. I practice what I preach to
Oh
the
yeah.
putting positive energy out there, and it's
Mm.
just to have that sort of conversation makes me feel like it should resonate with other people out there. But I pointed out as well that within the community, spirituality and consciousness is one of the subjects that not a lot of people attach to.
Mm-hmm.
There's other parts of the phenomenon that they prefer to hear. And she made a great point that as we get further into understanding what this phenomenon is, disclosure happens, or the conversation is going to shift from what these things are into now the whole consciousness side of this and how that is related to everything else.
Oh,
So I
absolutely.
agree with her on that. This thing should be shifting soon.
Yeah, yeah. I heard what she was talking about, and I say this all the time, and I know you've probably heard me say this too, is that how we are all energy and we're shared energy, and so many people don't realize that it's everyone around you who you surround yourself with, and the things that you do, and the people that are around you. I mean, it really doesn't matter if it's the air or if it's the water, even the ocean's energy. And so people don't realize that it's literally everything around us, and
Yeah,
we do have paranormal shared energy.
yeah.
And we have to remember that sometimes that will affect us.
Here's the thing with that. I'm so big into putting positive energy out that it almost offends me when someone does the opposite. Like if someone does the opposite of that and brings negative energy, because I believe the energy, like I was telling her, is infectious and it multiplies and resonates. So putting
Absolutely.
positive out energy out there is what we want, and we want that to spread, which it would multiply as it goes. But then
Yes.
anyone who is would use that negative energy, it would do the same thing. It multiplies and spreads as well. So that's what offends me about it. So someone
Yeah,
that intentionally brings the dark energy and
absolutely. And
wants that to spread.
Rob, I totally agree with you. And I always say, you're only as good as who you surround yourself with. So if you're surrounding yourself with negativity and negative people, that is going to affect you.
Yeah,
And so that's why I'm always trying to live like my best life, be happy, be positive, think about good things. Like, yes, there's going to be things that affect us and bring us down, but then you got to find a way to build yourself back up, bring it back to the positive. And so we always have to remember that because we're the shared energy. So if you're surrounding yourself with negativity, it will in fact affect you. As positive as you want to be, it will truly affect you.
and what I think is the most beautiful thing about it, as much as I don't like the way society kind of puts us into this, it literally into a machine at 5, 6 years old and spits us out at 70, at retirement age. The one thing that I think is actually good is at one of your most impressionable ages, 5 years old, they
Hmm.
teach you the golden rule. It's a simple rule that really leads you through life. Treat others the way you want to be treated. It's so simple. it just means so much if you really grasp it. So I think that's like one of the most awesome things that they teach young people coming in
Yeah,
to life. You know what I mean? Because that's like one of the most important rules that you should know. So
absolutely.
pretty awesome. Pretty
Yeah,
awesome.
I
We got about
agree.
30 seconds left here.
Okay.
Yeah, so filling in for Davey tonight. Yesterday also, not sure tomorrow. I know he's out of town. And he said he might be back tomorrow, but he wasn't sure. So I guess I'll be on call for that. But if he
Like
doesn't,
Dr. Rob.
yeah, exactly. If he doesn't, that means I get to hang out with Tim again for the UFO report, which was awesome. Here we go. 5 seconds.
Nice.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Spaced Out Radio after hour number 3. As I fill in for Dave Scott, we got Jax here, who is again not Brian Bowden, but she's here with the Paranormal Report as we go ahead and get ready to jump back into it. Space travelers, think about joining the club. $5 per month to join our Patreon. We totally appreciate that in the sport for Spaced Out Radio. As we get back into it, Jax. Okay, so we're going. I just want to lead off at the end of the story that you told. So we had the Bigfoot with the rock, and then the other Bigfoot came out the forest. When you were
Yeah.
talking about the screaming, I was like, okay, that sounds like one of those situations where I don't know what they call them, mimics or something like that, where they imitate like people in distress to kind of draw you in to where they're at, and then they do something bad to you. That's where I thought the story was going. I
Yeah.
was like,
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, I have heard those screams before myself. I've heard things that sound like women screaming. I've heard things that sound like basically kind of like a scary banshee style scream. I've heard children
right.
crying, babies crying. I've even heard children laughing, um, talking. So yeah, it's interesting the sounds that they can mimic is really a highly intelligent being to be able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Scary stuff. What else do you got for us tonight?
Okay, so I'm going to talk about this other family. Actually, it's an older couple. They also live here in the U.S. They actually don't want to give out their location, but I'm going to tell their story. So this was actually an older gentleman and his wife. They lived out basically on a farm, but kind of closer to the mountains. And the husband kept hearing something like he'd go outside, his wife would work inside the house, and he would go out and work on the farm. And he kept hearing something very odd throughout the day or the night. And this went on for like a couple of weeks. And so one night he decided that he would get a little bit closer out, and he had a cornfield, and he thought he heard some rustling out in the middle of the cornfield. So he decided to go out there, and he gets about halfway through when this very large, hairy creature stands up in the middle of the field, about probably 10 feet away from him, which at first startles him. And he looks at it, and this, creature looks right back in. And then he realizes, he's like, oh my God, like, I think that's a Bigfoot, and he had been living there basically his whole life, had never had an experience, and he had never heard any like noises like it had made, and it would grunt and come in. It kept getting closer and closer. Well, he had had some of his animals taken, like some chickens and some different things that happened. So for a while, he had been trying to figure out exactly what was going on. Well, he said it was a very strange experience because the stories that he had heard prior about a Bigfoot would be like it would either scream at someone and try to scare the person off, or, it would run away. He said this one literally stood there just making eye contact with him. And he said it had a very human like face, hair on it, but very human like. He said it was like looking at a human with almost like, the protruding eyebrow look that maybe like
Mhm.
caveman style, and then some hair around his face. He said he remembers it opening its mouth and it had very flat teeth, but very human-like eyes. And he said it just stood there, kind of just staring at him. And the man said it was such a strange feeling for me because I had zero fear. And he goes, I have no idea why, but it was almost like a comforting feeling like, okay, he's standing here looking at me. He must have some kind of comfortable feeling, and maybe he's seen me before. So the man is now like basically thinking, I want to somehow find a way to communicate with him. If he's going to stand there, maybe we can like find a way to communicate with each other. So the man started talking to him, and you could tell, he said he could tell that it didn't quite understand what he was saying, but understood maybe more of his gestures. So he said he stood there just basically offering him like the corn around him, but he said, come with me, and he kept trying to get him to go into, I guess he had a big barn that he had collected other types of food. And he actually got him to follow him in there. And he said he was just mind blown that the thing was actually following him in and it would stay pretty close to him. And he thought, wow, not in a million years did I ever expect to not only hear about these things, but to now have not only an experience with it, but it's somehow feeling comfortable enough to come into my barn and accept food from me, like as if we're communicating with each other. And he said, so we offered this Bigfoot corn. And I don't remember all what he said. I think he had like maybe some other types of vegetables or carrots or sweet potatoes. I can't remember exactly what all he had, but he was giving him food to take and offering him different things to try. And he said that it looked him straight in the eye and just kind of gave him like this feeling, this comforting feeling of like, thanking him for the food and for his kindness. And he said it was almost like a feeling of just, this almost like the rest of the world has been missing out on this connection, the humanity of what everyone else fears. They run away and they never get that full connection. He says, I've never even heard of a story of a Bigfoot coming close or another person telling a story that something has connected to a human in that way. So of course then he gives them the vegetables and he basically runs off and so he's excited. So he goes in, he wants to tell his wife all about it. Well, of course, she thinks he's crazy. Oh, you're just making things up. You're old. You're senile. She's got every
Mhm.
excuse under the sun why, he's making this story up, trying to scare her or whatever. So he said after that, he waited outside for every night for about 2 more weeks and nothing happened. He never came back. And he thought, well, maybe that's my one and only, but it's an amazing thing of that connection that I had and what happened. That'll forever stay with me. And I'll know like that happened. And so he kept telling his wife, like, I'd really love for this to come back. And she's like, oh, you're crazy. That thing would kill you, even if it was true, but I don't believe it's true. And so he said about a week went by. So this is about 3 weeks later. He said he was sitting out on his porch and had heard another, little bit of like rustling around out in the corn again. And so he thought, oh my God, is that my friend? Now he's like literally saying to himself, we're friends. And that really took me back when he was talking about that, because that's how it used to be back in the day. The stories of like indigenous people or Native Americans who have these stories of like these connections with them back in the past. And so he went back out there and he's looking again, and he says his wife, I think his wife had gone to the store, and he's out there, and once again, and he's standing there looking at him face to face, looking at each other. And he's talking to him, and he's just saying, like, I just want you to know that I'm comfortable with you. I'm okay with you coming here and eating the food. And, you're always welcome here on my land. And he's just saying all these different things to make this Bigfoot feel like, you're always welcome here. And he said he just had this feeling, this sense of like it understood him, even though it didn't speak back. And so once again, he shared the food with them. And he said, just about this time, and I think they're back in the barn again, and he's giving him more food. The wife pulls up, and the lights startled the Bigfoot from the headlights on the car. Well, of course, it decides to take off running. And at that point, the wife kind of gets a glance of like it running away. And of course, her husband's telling her, like, look, that's the Bigfoot. That's the one I've been telling you about. This is true. And she could not believe what she saw. And she had thought he had been making it up. It was just this, insane story. He was just bored with his life and needed something fun to talk about or trying to freak her out. And lo and behold, here's this Bigfoot literally coming on their land. And so he continued to say, like, for years that continued to happen. It would come in and they would talk to each other. It would stand face to face and look at each other. And it just makes you realize, and I've said this before, that so many people are so convinced that Bigfoot or these creatures, whatever you want to call it, are just these horrible, like scary creatures that will only harm you. You know what I mean? If you get too close, or that's what people are always saying, like, oh, you got to run, you got to take off. I think that there at one time was more of a human Bigfoot connection back in the day, and they've lost that over time. And I think that that one specifically, having a connection with this man, just goes to show like they're not as horrible and harmful as people really do think that they are, that they're not just going to come up and kill you. You don't hear too many stories of people saying, oh, so and so was killed by Bigfoot. I mean, there are people that go missing, but it doesn't mean it's Bigfoot.
I'll say
So,
this. There's definitely well, first of all, let's start here. Bigfoot, if it's to be believed, some people think that it's an offshoot of in some way related to human beings in some fashion. So it's just
mhm,
starting there. If that's the case, then I would definitely feel like you could probably find some ones that would be curious on, like, hey, we're actually relatives, and
mhm,
going into it, if that's the case as well, it's no different than you walking into a foreign country where you don't know the language and you're trying to communicate, and you may communicate through actions that may lead you in somewhere to follow, and those sorts of things. So there may be a little bit of that there. But then on the flip side, if they're not
mhm,
related to human beings, and you have within different species of animals, they have an instinctual knowledge to stay away from certain things. And humans, as vicious as we've been to most things out there, they know, okay, these are humans, let me just stay out their way. But there's examples of like 1 in a million of any species of anything that
mhm,
seems to get along with other things. Like I
mhm,
saw, for example, I saw an alligator or crocodile. I don't know which one, but those are notoriously unforgivingly vicious. And I
mm,
saw it help an animal out of the water. Instead of eating it, it helped it out of the water to safety, which was
yeah,
like, whoa.
kind of
Then
mind blowing.
yeah, then per another example, you see the little baby boy that fell in the orangutan or the gorilla pit, and then the eat help the baby. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Instead of doing what the opposite thing was.
yeah,
So I think there's a lot of examples of that, and it usually is like a 1 in a million thing. But then even with that, Robin Haynes talks about Bigfoot
mhm.
that interact with people on a regular basis. So I
Yeah,
think it's
yeah,
pretty cool.
absolutely. Well, I think animals, most animals, I'm not going to say all, but I'd say most animals kind of have that, that motherly or fatherly instinct to help their, young. So I think, especially if it's a younger person, like a child, they definitely have that instinct to help. I mean, I've actually seen videos. My kids are always watching videos and they show me these videos all the time of like these animals, other animals helping other animals, just like exactly what you're talking about. And it's really mind blowing to think like, wow, you just don't think about the world in that way. You think they kind of all stick together in their own little, clan, their own little family, they've got their own little family, but you just don't think about them like that. But they really do, in fact, help each other at times, which is amazing.
Yeah, and you don't know if it's a chemical imbalance in that particular one that just takes away the fear portion of it and the
Mhm.
the instinctual stay away sort of thing, and or is it just one that's trying to relate to another animal, like, hey, forget our differences, let's come
Yeah,
together and let's, so I don't know,
yeah,
something you think about.
yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we don't have the answers really. I mean, honestly, as humans, I mean, we can study animals, but we're never really ever going to fully understand them, the way they think, the way they feel. You know, I mean, unless you're that animal, that's going to be like almost impossible, right? So it's exactly the same thing if you're talking about a Bigfoot or any other cryptid for that matter. We don't know. Like we mainly look at cryptids as scary. you know,
Yeah.
they're very scary. But well, perfect example of what I went through at Mount Adams with Lee when I had the encounter with the Bigfoot that came up and got super curious about us. I
Yeah.
mean, that thing could have mauled us. I mean, we're talking about the tiniest little sliver of material between us, and that. You know what I mean? So it and it's funny too because this is totally a completely off the topic situation, but but since we're talking about it, I said to Lee the other day, I had this thought came to me out of just nowhere one day, and I thought, it makes me wonder because I believe that Bigfoot specifically can see, they know we're there way before we're there, right?
Hmm.
We don't know exactly how they see. Now, their eyes glow in the dark, and we do know that they're very interesting colors. Like we've seen them as red or gold. Some people even say like a weird green, but it made me wonder when I was thinking about it, could it see us through that material? Or
Yeah,
not.
possibly. What is
Yeah.
that? What technology is that? X-ray vision potentially, or yeah, I mean, we know for sure other animals see in different spectrums that we
Yeah.
can't see because of the reflective low light that allows us to see in low light. So yeah, who knows? I mean, until we could get one, which humans always figure they have to, cut something open and examine it, right? So
Yeah.
if they ever did, then I guess they'd be able to see. But yeah, I've heard the same thing. I mean, I haven't seen a Bigfoot before, but I've talked to many people who say they have, and I've heard the yellow eyes for sure.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
and I can't remember the person I spoke to, but he thought maybe he had an issue with the glowing part of it. I think either he said they do glow, whatever it was the opposite of what everybody else says. Like, they, instead of them having like the reflective material in their eyes like other animals,
Uh-huh.
they glow. Or it could have been the other way around. I can't remember, but I know it was the opposite of what most people
Yeah.
say.
Well, in fact, that now that you've mentioned that, the reason why that's probably the case is because, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I believe this, that there are multiple species of Bigfoot. I don't believe that they're all the identical same. Like, I don't see, how that could possibly be. If, like, one person says, well, I saw one that's all gray and had green eyes. And then another one will say, I saw one that's all red that had red eyes, or, you know what I mean? So it makes you wonder, like, I mean, as humans, we have different colored eyes. Now, they don't glow. I mean, it'd be kind of cool if they did, but but they don't. But like in fact, we all have very different colored eyes. And so it makes you think like they're either one species with very different looks, just like humans,
Right.
or they're just all very different individual species. Because I have heard over time where they'll look very different. But then again, so do we as humans.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I've heard at least a few different ones. I've heard the ones that have the more of hairless face, more sort of human like the one you're mentioning in that
Yeah.
story. I've heard of the ones that are super hairy and have like the cones on top of their
Yeah.
heads, like
Yeah.
cone-shaped heads. I've heard of other. I think Brown Dwarf. Someone I want to say it was Brown Dwarf said he saw one and it looked like his skin was pulled back on its face, and so there's a lot of different descriptors. There definitely isn't
Yeah.
one uniform description of Bigfoot. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you remember me telling this story a while back, but when I was younger, I would say I was probably around maybe 9 or 10. My dad and I saw three of the. We would say they were well juvenile for sure, but we don't know like around what age because we don't know how big they are. You know what I mean? Like they could come out very big at newborns. We don't know.
Right.
I would say they were approximately the size of about maybe a 2 to 3 year old, probably around a 3 year old, the ones we saw. And we saw three of them playing together. We never saw a mother, a father, or any adults. It was just three of the soil. And it reminded us of like baby like Ewoks. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I was
Like the
gonna say that. That's what.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I remember the very first time I ever saw Star Wars, and my dad and I were just like we kind of just like looked at each other like, oh my gosh, like that's like kind of what we saw. But it was very weird because we obviously knew that was a made up thing on you know, the movie, but it almost made us wonder like, whoa, is that kind of like where they got this from? Does somebody know about these things?
You
But
got
the area that I saw it in was
you
not
got
like a normal area.
5 seconds, Jax.
Okay.
So yeah, so definitely appreciate Jax coming on in with the paranormal report. Oh, actually it's 30 seconds. Okay. So it does a countdown to 30 and then 30 more. Okay, good. We got about 20 seconds if you want to finish that.
Okay, yeah, I was just gonna say it was just really interesting because, like I said, we didn't see the adults. So all we saw were the children playing, kind of jumping on and off this rock. And then all at once, all three of them kind of stopped in their tracks and all of them looked one way and took off running and we didn't see them again. So we were assuming that one of the parents must have called them.
Interesting story, Jax. Appreciate you coming in for the paranormal report. Actually, that's Jax, not Brian Bowden. Once again,
Brian
definitely
and
want to
Brad.
thank the super chatters, guests, and everybody. I also want to thank this man right here, the man you hear, Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Dog, the man rocking us out each and every weekend, as he reminds us to never say never again. Because yes, the phenomena is real, and anything and everything is possible. So show your love, throw your horns up. Also, we want to thank all of our viewers online and listeners on terrestrial radio and digital platforms when and wherever in the world you may be listening. We appreciate you for tuning your frequency to Spaced Out Radio, where we do what we do best. And what's that, you ask? We own the night. Remember, this show is copyright of Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. It's been a pleasure serving you once again as your host. I'm Mr. Rob G. This is the After Hours Radio Show. And to all you space travelers out there, it's not a goodbye nor a farewell. However, as we go off the air for the night, we will see you next time. Take care, everybody. Much love. excellent show tonight. All right. Do appreciate
Nice
you, Jack.
seeing you.
That's definitely, it's been a minute. It's been a minute.
I know.
Yeah, I do appreciate you. I'm gonna go ahead and shut this thing down so I can go ahead and get in the BED.
Yeah, me too. Well, good night.
Talk soon.
Sure
All right.
will. Bye.
All right, everybody. Definitely want to thank you all for coming on in. I mean, you, everyone here on YouTube, also over on X. I know we have people viewing from there, and also on Twitch. So if you're on X, please hit that little heart button right below the video. Just let everybody know that you thought it was cool, and then that way they can check it out. If you're on YouTube, go ahead, hit that little thumb guy right there, so that people on YouTube know that this video is a cool video and they'll check it out as well. And it juggles the algorithm. We would appreciate all that. And there is, if you know the Social Dig, which is my personal channel, we got a show going on over there in about 15 minutes. So if you want to continue the chat, definitely head out on over there. And I'm going to go ahead and wrap this thing up. You guys have a great rest of your night as we rock out right here with my favorite outro. Let's go.
Cause we want retribution. Oh yeah, we want retribution. Oh yeah, we want retribution.